This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
What do you say to people scared stiff in cash?
We've got an administration, presumably, that will be pro-business, lower taxes.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
AI affecting demand for cloud computing.
And Michael Barr with news.
U.S. Secretary of State discussed the conflict in Gaza.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney. Is Michael Barr in today?
Michael Barr is in
It's dark in the
today.
door.
How good is that?
It's
Yep.
very good. Michael Barr's here. Lisa Mateo's here. Pulled her away from holiday shopping, as they say. We say good morning to all of you. Got the A-team in, as Nathan Hager said. Nathan Hager, Karen Moscow, getting the day started.
DC.
It's a working Monday here. Lisa, like part of the known world's off today, right? Remember you used to work to Christmas Eve, Lisa? You'd
Back in
go
the day.
in Christmas Eve. You'd have...
Yep.
breakfast,
Eggnog.
Mrs. Keene and I would waltz down Fifth Avenue and look at things we couldn't afford.
Yep.
You'd have the eggnog.
Sure.
And you'd work till Christmas Eve. That's sort of what we're doing as a team here. I'm here Monday, Tuesday. Paul's here a little bit longer. But we say good morning to all of you across a frigid nation as well. How cold are the dolphins out on the beach in New Jersey?
Some knuckleheads were surfing yesterday. I mean,
Really?
when the water temperature is warmer than the air temperature, that's just, you can't do it. But yeah, they were out
They
there.
were out there
Sure.
surfing.
Offshore breeze, so they had some good waves, so it's all good.
Okay, we say good morning to all of you across the nation. We've got an absolutely spectacular lineup today. We start strong with Margie Patel, who's had the courage. She's like fixed income manager of the year like 14 times.
Yep,
And she's in dividends and in equities as well. We'll get an update. Troy Gayeski with us, Andrew Slimon, Morgan Stanley with us, Stephen Snik in studio. Thank you, Stephen Snik, for that. And we got an interesting market, the VIX, 18.85. Of course, Bloomberg Surveillance, we're brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Trade over 10,000 U.S. stocks in ETFs, U.S. equity index options, U.S. treasuries, and more on your timetable. Learn more at ibkr.com/around the clock. And we thank Interactive Brokers for foundational support this year, and we hope into next year as well. From the Interactive Brokers studios, our Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
And we've got futures right now. Well, we've got a mix of red and green on the screen. And this is after a year-end shutdown was avoided. Right now, let's start with NASDAQ futures. Up about 0.1%, 32 points. Dow futures down 0.2%, 118 points. S&P futures, little change, down about 4. The 2-year yield at 4.32%. That's little changed. And the yield on the 10-year, 4.53%. And that's up 1 basis point. We have the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up about 0.3%. The Japanese yen weaker, euro weaker at 103.98 against the dollar. We have the British pound weaker. We have Bitcoin up about 0.7% at just over 95,000. Few companies making news. Honda and Nissan. They've agreed to start merger talks, form a holding company. They plan to list by August of 2026. Mitsubishi will decide whether to join by January. So we have Honda up about 3% in Japan. Nissan up more than 1%. And Rupert Murdoch's News Corp agreed to sell Foxtel Group. Well, it's a sports platform DAZN Group. It's a deal values the Australian pay TV streaming service at $2.1 billion. And finally, Xerox agreed to buy Lexmark. It's a deal valued at $1.5 billion. Xerox down about 1%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. We start strong this morning with Margie Patel of Allspring, of course, here on Courage to Be in the Market for those looking to capture a dividend or yield as well. Margie, you have always been wonderful about rotating to stocks when necessary. For next year, should people of a fixed income persuasion rotate to stocks?
I think they should. I think it's going to be another year where stocks are going to do better than fixed income.
See the short answers we get from her.
Yeah, well, she knows what she's
It's
talking about.
freezing out.
It's freezing out. Well, she's in Wisconsin. I don't know where.
She's in
Boston.
Boston.
Up in Boston. So it's like
freezing.
3 degrees below. So Margie.
Longer answers, Margie.
So Margie, so if I sit here in the fixed income space, how are you thinking about 2025 in fixed income? Because I looked this year. I mean, for those who took risk, like leverage loans, high yield, they really outperformed the rest of the fixed income space. How about for next year?
Well, that's right. And in fact, that's been the case since the Fed began tightening in 22, that the lower the quality, the better the return. And I think it just reflects the fact that the economy is good. There's no recession in sight. The Fed is either neutral or cutting rates. And so defaults are going to stay low. So I think that you're going to see interest rates remain low. Defaults, saying in other words, risk takers will be rewarded. It looks like defaults for bonds next year should be 2 to 3%, and for loans, say 3 to 4%. That's well under the long-term average. And the absolute return, in good quality junk bonds, you're getting, say, 6.5% to say 7.5%. That's really not competitive with what I think you'll get in even an average stock in 25.
All right, let's go to the average stocks in 2025. How do you expect the equity markets to shape up for next year? Because we have had 2 years in a row here in 23 and 24, more than 20% returns here. How's that set up for 25?
Well, I think it'll still be a positive year. We had a great year in 24 because we had, say, economic growth of 1.5 to 2.5, 3%, but we had profit growth of, say, 12, 14% when you look at the whole market. So that shows you that corporate profit growth can be a lot faster than the GDP growth, and I think that's what we'll see. I think we'll see growth next year, say 1.5 to 2.5%. Profit growth, maybe a little lower, 10 to 12. But I don't think we'll see the PE, the price earnings ratio expansion that we saw last year, which gave so much of that return. So if we're up, say, 8, 10, 12%, that's quite competitive, and I think that'll outperform all the sectors in the fixed income market.
Good morning on your commute across the nation. Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. Good morning on Sirius XM Channel 121. Humbled by the response. They are on the quarter from 99.1 FM, a balmy 20 degrees in Washington, up to New York, Bloomberg 1130, and in Margie Patel's 92.9 FM in Boston. We say good morning. I didn't look up Mount Katahdin's temperature in Millinocket. I did. No, it's 11 below zero on Mount Washington. Yep, Margie's been there. Yep. She's been up that little train that goes up. Margie, I want to go bigger, broader. It's the end of the year. And there's a lot of people that missed owning NVIDIA. Thank you. I'm one of them. Margie, define how we should avoid value traps, those stocks that are cheap, but they never go up. How do you avoid an equity value trap?
I think you have to look at, first of all, the sector that they're in. The reality is that in an economy growing 1.5%, 2.5%, a lot of sectors are going to be growing at that level or even flat. And I think we've seen that in some sectors where we really haven't seen any corporate profit expansion. And I think those are the ones to continue to avoid. In commoditized businesses, there's always one or two leaders in each industry, but a lot of industries, for example, healthcare this year has been a real value trap across the board.
Okay, that's right where I wanted to go. You're reading my mind here. And, Boston with a huge heritage of hospitals and academics, Mass General with that spiritual anesthesiology history back to the 19th century. Healthcare's been the mother of value traps. Start with the why, and can it get out of that value trap forward?
Well, if you look at healthcare over a long time, Tom, as you know, there's some years, particularly sectors like biotech that attract a lot of interest. They can go for years of underperformance. So I'm thinking that maybe we'll have a turn mid-year 25, maybe. But one, there hasn't been enough money. The money spigot to put money into biotechs, into basic research has kind of dried up. Some of the emerging market demand for tools and devices has also declined a lot. And then we've had, patent cliffs where drugs that were very profitable, their prices drop because they become generic. And then there's a big uncertainty about what Washington is going to do. It doesn't seem like it's a real favorable backdrop for the whole sector. So a lot of uncertainty about how profit can turn around. So the few names have done well, but mostly they have been underperformers. So we think it's still likely to be safe, no bankruptcies. But will you make a lot of money in the sector? It doesn't look like, it looks like it's too early, let's put it that way.
Margie, thanks so much. Margie Patel of Allspring, thank you for leading us off strong this morning. I mentioned MGH and anesthesia. It's the Ether Dome at MGH. Whatever you do across this nation, if you ever get the chance, go to Massachusetts General Hospital and see the ether dome and the historic moment in 1846 where they
Really?
first used ether. It's
Oh.
shockingly extant.
Wow.
And they still get the young troops in there. Forget
Yep.
about Hollywood and all that. They sit there and they look down at a table where they tried to figure this out in
Right.
1846. And I can't say enough about it. It's not in any
Yep.
tour guide or anything like that, but if you ever get the chance, check that out. In Boston at MGH. Right now, red and green on the screen with our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. If you are traveling for the holiday, expect crowds, delays, and traffic. At LaGuardia Airport, the TSA expects to screen 40 million passengers between December 19th and January 2nd.
The terminals are full. I mean, I've never seen them that full before.
On the roads, AAA expects 90% of travelers to drive to their destinations, about 107 million. Amtrak railway service across the Northeast Corridor faced delays and cancellations today, causing chaos for passengers traveling ahead of the holidays. According to Amtrak's website, travelers should expect a significant delay in and out of New York Penn Station as the rail network seeks to recover from signal power issues. At least 8 services have been canceled due to signal issues. President Joe Biden will commute the death sentences of 37 federal prisoners today. He will use his presidential clemency powers to reduce their sentences to life imprisonment without parole. Donald Trump denies that Elon Musk will be taking over the presidency, addressing concerns about Musk's influence in his administration. The president-elect also called fees for ships to pass through the Panama Canal ridiculous. Trump praised the possibility of trying to seize back control of the Panama Canal.
We're being ripped off at the Panama Canal like we're being ripped off everywhere else. He just said take it back, and it's a good idea.
But Panama's president was quick to push back, saying that every square meter is in their sovereign territory. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. And this is Bloomberg. Boy, I wish you guys could see this on camera. Tom, Paul,
On
Lisa.
radio, it's ugly. Is this fun? I don't know anything about the NFL. I'm the dumbest guy out here. What a great year, Michael Barr.
Oh, yes, it is. Did you
It's
see
just
the
great.
trick play the Lions put on the Bears?
They learned that from someone, right?
Well, they put the Bears on You Just Got Played Avenue because that was great, man. They faked out stumbling, and then they threw a touchdown pass. They were just outside of the red zone.
The Buffalo Bills had the easiest schedule in football, but you got 13-2 between the Lions and the Vikings.
Yeah.
I mean,
this
it's
is
going to
tough.
be, and they play like not this weekend, next weekend. sort of.
Yeah, see, the Lions, they play the 49ers next week.
Right.
So we kind of need Minnesota to lose and for us to win, and then we don't have to worry about Week 18.
Lions, Vikings. That'll be good. That'll be fantastic.
Barr on assignment missed Buffalo beating the Lions. It was a good and beautiful moment, the snowball.
It was.
was-
For you guys, yes. I'm like, it's like, oh, guys, come on. No.
But this is like great. I
You
mean,
got to work on the New York teams now. You have to figure out
Man,
something.
come on, G-Man. Jets,
Can I
we
just-
can't have that.
in 20 seconds, or I can't even do it, in 10 seconds, why is New York football so bad?
I have no idea, except that, pick it up, G-Man. That's my good deed for the day.
Okay. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. Coming up, folks, team coverage of Boise State versus
Oh, yeah,
Penn
Penn State.
State. Red and green on the screen, the VIX 18.65 on YouTube, Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We've got stocks mixed, and this is after the Federal Reserve's preferred inflation gauge came in below expectations on Friday, and a U.S. government shutdown was averted over the weekend. On the economic calendar for today, the Conference Board issued this month's Consumer Confidence Report. We'll also get reports on factory orders for durable goods and new home sales. We have NASDAQ futures up 0.2%, 59 points. S&P futures little changed, up just a point. And Dow futures down 0.2%. Dow futures down about 88 points. 2-year yield 4.32%. That's little change. The yield on the 10-year 4.53%, and that's up 1 basis point. We have Brent crude at $72 a barrel, WTI crude $69 a barrel, and we have NYMEX crude at $69 a barrel. Spot gold $2,617 an ounce. A few companies making news: Palantir and Anduril. They're reportedly in talks to partner with rivals to make joint bids for U.S. government work. That's according to the Financial Times. Palantir up about 0.2%. And Universal Music Group expanded its global partnership with Amazon Music. That's to boost fan engagement, but also to help with fraud protection, including unlawful AI-generated content. And finally, Direct Line Insurance Group. Their shares are up more than 3% in London after Aviva agreed to buy the insurer. It's a deal valuing the firm at around $4.7 billion. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. Wherever you get your podcasts, I'm Lisa Mateo. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. The single thing I'm looking at on the Bloomberg Launchpad, equities, bonds, currencies, commodities, is a 10-year real yield, which is a 190 something, and it's come up with everything else. Yields have all come up. And it's now at 2.23%. And that really gets my attention. That is a shift here. I have to say this. What's the statistic, Paul, you're looking at besides Penn State beating? Who'd they trounce this weekend?
They beat SMU, and now they get to play Boise State in the Fiesta Bowl. How about that? The number jumps out at me, Tom. SPX sitting right at 6,000 on your SPX, unchanged on the day. So we've got some interesting levels out there for SPX, Dow, and NASDAQ.
Dow futures 43,216 as well. Joining us now in equity conversation, Troy Gayeski joins us, Chief Market Strategist at FS Investments. Got a great lineup forward on YouTube and on your commute. Steve Snik will join us. Lori Calvasina will join us as well. Dana Telsey on retail. We finished strong in the 9 o'clock hour. Troy, thumb up or thumb down on a third year of double-digit return?
Thumbs up, Tom. I think it's going to be pretty clear next year whether you're investing in private or public equity. It should be a pretty strong year. We are going to have, 2% or greater economic growth driven again by consumption. We may get a little weaker government spending depending upon what happens in the U.S. I agree with your prior host that it's going to be a lot harder to get multiple expansion next year. But if you're looking for growth, which is the whole point of owning equities, stick with the U.S., complement your market cap weighted indices with middle market private equity, and strong revenue growth will again drive strong earnings growth.
Okay, chemical engineer guy, let's do some thermodynamics because it's freezing out. What's the entropy of this market? In thermo, there's this thing that drives work forward, effort forward. What's the entropy that keeps the ballet going?
Yeah, so remember, entropy is the wasting of energy that takes place during a productive use. And I think what we still see in markets is people holding on to maybe a little bit too much cash. Cash balances are still roughly 20%. And obviously cash yields have gone down. After taxes, after inflation, you're right around break even. And then we also see entropy with this hope in the fixed income market that back-end yields have actually peaked, which we don't agree with at all. And so then the question is, how do you put that cash or complement fixed income? And you have such a wide range of choices these days, whether it's things like private credit for more yield. If you're overweight U.S. equities, you can rotate some of that into middle market private equity. If you're still holding on to this thesis that international equities will eventually outperform the U.S., which is a holdover from the lost decade, you can rotate some of that capital back. And I also think, lastly, if you look at the pre-election period and then post-election, you saw this huge run-up in the Russell 2000. But what a lot of people are unaware of is just how poor the revenue growth's been there for quite some time. We've only had less than 2% revenue growth the last 12 months in an economy where we've been comfortably growing at 5-6% nominal GDP. So we still see folks arguably overweight small cap US, and that trade's sort of done post-election.
Troy, you mentioned private equity, private credit. What percentage do you think of a typical portfolio should be allocated towards alternatives?
Yeah, so it always gets down to the individual investor. But if you look at what most of the endowments and foundations have been doing, they've been putting, let's say somewhere between 20 and 30% in private equity, somewhere between 10 and 15%. Most of the major wealth channels have a 20 to 30% target for their investors over time. The current penetration rates are only about 4 to 5%, so there's a long way to go. And so if you think about that breakdown, if you need more income, then you lean more into private credit. If you're looking for a growth complement to your U.S. equity exposure, your market cap weighted U.S. equity exposure, then you look for private equity. And then within private equity, there's a big difference between the middle market where you just get better revenue growth and have much more seamless exits, as well as less leverage on the balance sheet and cheaper valuations, and large and mega cap, which is really dependent more upon the IPO market coming back. We do expect that to happen, just not to the same levels of 2021, which were boom times, as you know.
All right. So back in the, public equity market, Troy, is it the big Magnificent Seven stocks are going to lead the way? What's going to lead this market higher? Because again, past 2 years, north of 20% returns in each year.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of like keep it simple, stupid, right? The key to owning equities is owning companies that compound free cash flow growth. And even though the Magnificent Seven, the top 10 equity positions, the Qs, the larger positions, S&P, aren't going to have the revenue and earnings growth they've had the past several years compared to broader markets. They still compound free cash flow. Now, you have to understand, like we talked before, that valuations are stretched. You're not going to have those same returns as 23, 24. And it's not that the revenue and earnings growth next year won't broaden out. It certainly will. Just, again, a question, will it broaden out as much as most people are predicting? And we have strong questions about that. Sometimes market cap weighted indices are your friend. It's a positive selection bias index, as opposed to things like the Russell, which are obviously negative selection bias indices.
Troy, one final question. On private equity and the workout, is there a sense that FS Investments that private equity can monetize, that they can close out transactions that have been a struggle to close out? Or is there going to be a shock, a surprise there for private equity in 2025?
Yeah, so I think this, again, is where it's really important to differentiate large mega between mid-market. Large mega, if you look at what's occurred the last several years, is, underlying vintages have continued to extend because transaction volume, monetization events have dropped, in some cases by 50 to 70%. So the expectation for the industry is that mergers come back as well as IPOs. We're very confident on merger financing, which is another exit point, right? As they're merging or selling to a strategic acquirer. IPO volume almost certainly will come back from the lows where it was. That being said, the way we think of it is the extension risk will arrest itself. It won't continue, but it's unlikely that they shorten. And that continues to provide an opportunity in the secondary market if you have liquidity at the ready.
Troy Gayeski, thank you so much. FS Investments here to get us started with equity coverage on a Monday. Publishing in the last 20 minutes, John Stolfus with an SPX 7000 call. I'm not sure where that is. Okay. It's like 5 years from now, 10 years from now. He goes, the S&P 500 is advanced 64% from the last bear market low. That was the what I call Yardeni Ancampora low of October 12, 2022. Information technology stocks that Lisa Mateo owns up 125%. Communication services, I have no idea what that is, up 113%.
It's like Google and Facebook.
But if we're up 64%, that means other things didn't go up.
Yep.
Like, this is the heart of the matter.
We got Mr. Stolfus on tomorrow.
Oh, we do? I didn't know that.
Yep. How about that?
Oh, my word. Wonderful.
Yep.
And it may, he says GDP growth surprise to the upside. Going to get a lot of different opinions for you here over the next number of days into this wonderful holiday week. Michael Barr will have our reports on Amtrak out of Moynihan. Some delays this morning. Stay warm out there. On YouTube, this is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Well, futures are mixed in this holiday shortened trading week. Major U.S. stock indexes they're coming off their worst week since mid-November. Right now, NASDAQ futures up about 0.4%, 85 points. S&P futures little changed, up about 5 points. Dow futures down about 0.1% or 82 points. The 2-year yield at 4.32%, up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 4.54%, and that's up 2 basis points. To currencies, we have the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up about 0.3%. Japanese yen down about 0.4% at 157.05 against the dollar. The euro, British pound weaker, and we have Bitcoin up more than 1% at just over 96,000. Few stocks on the move. That's video sharing platform Rumble up 43% after it said that Tether is set to acquire a stake in the company. And then you have stocks linked to quantum computing. They're on the rise this morning. This is over optimism over Alphabet's Willow chip capabilities. So, for example, D-Wave Quantum up 19%, Rigetti Computing up 12%, and quantum computing up 5%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene here to get you through. She said it's a holiday shortened work week. It is.
Wednesday off? Yeah.
Wednesday off.
We'll take it.
All that into the final week of the year. Well, wonderful set of conversations for you to take a bigger, broader theme into 2025. Tina Fordham has been a huge benefit to us, geopolitical strategist, Fordham Global Foresight. Tina, just a window into this. How did you end up with Ibrahim Rabari? The guy is a AAA horse at Citigroup. He's out there. How did you and Ibrahim Rabari get together?
Well, Ibrahim and I worked together on Willem Bouter's global macro team, and it is our immense good fortune to have him working with us as a senior advisor. So I'm absolutely thrilled.
Just absolutely wonderful. I want to take a bigger, broader approach here. And you go into the wonderful work up at Harvard, the book, folks. It really became part of international relations, How Democracies Die. Stephen Levitsky and Daniel Ziblatt up at Harvard, and you pick up their phrase, norm erosion, and say we're living it. What norm erosion, Tina Fordham, are we going to see next year?
Well, we're already seeing it, and this is part of my, my pledge to try to prevent us from seeing all of these, disparate developments as idiosyncratic and one-off. Norm erosion can be everything from why our nieces and nephews don't send us thank you notes for Christmas presents, to the role of unelected advisors in the White House, to the end of kind of customs. Norms are not necessarily rules, they're certainly not laws. And I'm going to argue that they matter as much to our ability to conduct business as laws do.
So for 2025, Tina, given norm erosion, geopolitical denialism is another theme I know you're focused on. What are your themes for 2025 for investors as they think about geopolitics and the impact on markets?
I'm not sure how many investors want to think about geopolitics, because we've already seen the euphoria, now tempered to focus on the positive aspects of Trump's agenda, deregulation, and these are no doubt going to be positive. They're going to be especially positive for U.S. markets. But as you know, I'm based in London. I have coined the concept of geopolitical denialism, borrowing a little bit from climate denialism, and I'm suggesting that this is like being a flat earther when it comes to thinking about geopolitics. Because take the example of Syria, not a market-moving event, nor would one that we would expect to be, but it's the second and third order effects of geopolitics that matter. So times are good in U.S. markets, but I'm suggesting developments like Trump's recent comments, shall we say, questioning the validity of Greenland belonging to Denmark and the Panama Canal belonging to Panama are important. They are significant. They're not going to move markets, but they are extremely important because they suggest challenges to the rules of the game, and indeed something potentially more significant. And there are also big geostrategic implications. Those are not two random choices.
So if for investors and just markets in general, does that suggest over the next year, if not 4 years, maybe investors kind of rein in some of the risk taking because some of the geopolitics maybe emanating from the U.S. White House could be, really problematic?
I think you're going to see a lot of changes in stance, a lot of developments that may be more behind the scenes than, say, an event risk like a terrorist attack or a hot war. What would the U.S. need to do to, as Trump would put it, regain control of the Panama Canal? Could this be done through non-military means? I think looking at what military strategists call gray zone actions, which can be commercial, they can be legal, and through kind of salami tactics, can really change the facts on the ground. Right now, Russia and China have made clear that they don't believe that U.S. hegemony should continue. And what means will they use for that? And it may be more important to your question for, our CEO clients, for anyone with a complex supply chain. But these are big, great power challenges being played out through these small places.
Tina Fordham with us, Fordham Global Foresight here as we look at international relations into next year. Tina, just a question that came up this weekend. I think as an amateur, I'm saying there's a presidential tradition of giving ambassadors to people that gave you a lot of money to get elected. I get it, and all that. How do you as a grizzled pro respond to the ambassador selections we're seeing from President-elect Trump? We got a football player in the Bahamas. We got a father-in-law, son-in-law kind of thing in Paris, and on and on. How do you respond? Is it just business as usual, or is there something different going on in our ambassadorships?
First of all, I would like to reject the characterization of myself as grizzled on anything. Pro, yes.
I misspoke.
Grizzled.
Okay.
You can.
Yeah,
we
Lisa.
Can pick that up later.
Tina, I said it, and Lisa threw a gluten-free roll at me, so you're okay. Continue.
Thank you, Lisa. We have to stick up for each other. But all right. So what's the skinny on that? There's a lot of eye rolling going on. The expectation is that UK, US, and France, US, and German, US relations, will continue even if there is someone less than a grizzled old pro in the ambassadorship. It hasn't always been the case, by the way, that donors were awarded these plum kinds of posts. I mean, I'm thinking about people like Pamela Harriman in Paris and others. But Europe is not pushing back on any of this and, taking a stoic approach. And because you have to choose your battles. Everyone wants to work with this administration. And we will see just how robust the relationships are and the channels of communication and the areas of cooperation.
Tina, as we kind of think about 2025, what's maybe the key question you're getting from your clients these days about your remit, which is, again, geopolitics?
it couldn't be more broad. It is what's going to happen, because, again, at the, purely at the market level, everyone, buys the positive story, but there's a lot of worry about what could possibly go wrong. And even, tracking and monitoring risks as we do, there are so many wild cards, and that's, got to be part of the playbook here to kind of sow discontent and confusion. I'm looking a lot at these small data points developments that don't grab headlines, like, why is the Slovak President Robert Fico in Moscow? Hello? That is not something that the European Union agrees with. It's not a game changer in the narrowest sense, but when you combine that with Hungarian President Viktor Orban, seeing Putin, what's been happening in Romania, none of these, major economies, it adds up to leverage that Putin has, though, because these countries are all on the receiving end, or were, of Russian gas supplies. So if we wait until a full-blown event risk transpires, then we're not prepared for these downside surprises.
Tina, thank you so much. Tina Fordham with us, Fordham Global Foresight this morning. And I can't say enough, this phrase norm erosion is something to look out for in international relations into 2025. Red and green on the screen, a churn to the market here. The VIX 18.53. With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. Fly away or take the highway. You won't be alone as you head to your holiday destination. AAA says nearly 107 million people will be driving to those holiday gatherings. Meanwhile, the TSA expects to screen 40 million passengers between December 19th and January 2nd. That is a 6.2% hike from last year. This woman was at LaGuardia Airport.
7 times on standby trying to get back to Atlanta, Georgia, and I still can't get on.
Those traveling by train, Amtrak says due to signal issues, several trains have been canceled today. Additionally, customers traveling on the Northeast Corridor should expect lengthy delays in and out of New York Penn Station. President-elect Donald Trump hit back at the idea that he's handing the presidency to Elon Musk. During a speech at a conservative conference in Phoenix, Trump also says under his administration, it will be the official policy of the United States government that there are only 2 genders, male and female.
With the stroke of my pen on day 1, we're going to stop the transgender lunacy. And I will sign executive orders to end child sexual mutilation, get transgender out of the military and out of our elementary schools and middle schools and high school.
Trump also ratcheted up threats against Panama over Panama Canal shipping fees. President Joe Biden is commuting the sentences of 37 of the 40 people on federal death row, converting their punishments to life imprisonment mere weeks before President-elect Trump takes office. In a statement today, Biden says these commutations are consistent with the moratorium my administration has imposed on federal executions in cases other than terrorism and hate-motivated mass murder. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
I'm riveted, folks. I mean, I really don't understand what happens after the IBM Tostitos Vizio Dr. Pepper Snapple Group Fiesta Bowl. So in the old days, there was like parades with flowers like in Pasadena. And there were bowl games, Cotton Bowl, Texas always played. And you moved on. Now, Penn State plays a team from Idaho, Good Morning Idaho, early morning Idaho, in the Fiesta Bowl. And it's sort of like March Madness. Like, it really matters now.
It does. I mean, these are the 12-team playoffs.
It's different.
Yeah, it is different, and they're trying to get a little bit, like you mentioned, Tom, about the March Madness, but it's also a way to try to get to a better way to get to a real national championship game.
So after that, then they go to like a Final Four.
I think so, yeah.
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 Michael
So-
Barr, you want to weigh in here? I mean, do you want to weigh in on the IBM Tostitos Vizio Dr. Pepper Snapple Group Fiesta Bowl?
Its sponsorship is where the money is
Yep,
now. It's
yep.
not just like the Fiesta Bowl anymore or the Cotton Bowl.
Are you going?
I am not going, but you know who's probably going? Dan Ives, Wedbush Securities.
They had a photograph on it. For Penn State people, he's all dressed in white.
Yeah.
Because that's what the Nittany Lions are
Yeah,
doing.
we had the white out this past weekend. When
Why
they beat,
can't he dress in all white for us instead of killing
I
our
know.
rods and cones with a bright color?
Exactly.
Dan
Big
Ives
Penn State
probably
fan.
going.
Big
Yeah.
Penn State fan.
Oh, we'll see. We'll have team coverage of the IBM Tostitos Vizio Dr. Pepper Bowl in Phoenix. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We've got futures mixed, and this is after President Joe Biden signed funding legislation to keep the U.S. government operating until mid-March. We have NASDAQ futures up 0.4%, 92 points. Dow futures down 0.2%, 86 points. S&P futures up 0.1% or 6 points. We have the two-year yield 4.32%, up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 4.55%, and that's up 2 basis points. To commodities, Brent crude $72 a barrel, WTI crude $69 a barrel. And we have spot gold at $2,615 an ounce. Shares of Ozempic, Wegovy maker Novo Nordisk, they're actually on the rebound. This is from they're gaining some ground after a loss on Friday. Disappointing clinical results wiped out nearly $100 billion from its market value. So ADR is now up about 5%. And then shares of Novo's rival Eli Lilly, they're up about 1.5%. News on Friday, the FDA approved Zepbound for some sleep apnea patients. And finally, Elon Musk's Tesla continues to ride a post-Trump election wave. Shares are up more than 2%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
At least thanks so much. Paul, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is like a franchise.
Okay.
Paramount. And it had a ginormous weekend.
You never know.
It's kid stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, that's everybody's, like they're at home.
Yep.
And Lisa's kids and my kids, they don't talk to us. That's why I have dogs. They're the only ones that greet me at the door. But movies become parents, grandparents, loved ones with kids at home let's go to the movie theater and kill 4 hours.
Sure.
Is that the industry now?
It's been that way for a while. It's franchises, Tom. Think about all the franchises that Disney has. But again, you find one and you just keep running with it year after year after year. It's a lot easier than trying to come up with new stuff.
We're not going to talk about Kraven the Hunter. The numbers there, just, Lisa went, no one else. The top movies are Box Office Mojo, Sonic the Hedgehog, Mufasa, mixed reviews, Moana 2, ginormous.
Still there.
The top 3, my quick math is 30-something, $40 million domestic over a couple days.
Yeah, not great. Not great.
Not
it's okay.
great.
No, but it's, we'll see. I mean, it's going to end up being a decent year. Had a really strong Thanksgiving. I'm not sure what Lisa, she's our go-to. She's our touchstone on what's hot out there. But
Kraven the Hunter. Yes. We'll have to see it. That's all there is to it.
Now, a look at the front pages. What's making news around the world? Your daily roundup of today's headlines from major publications.
Your daily look at the front pages around the world. The Lisa Mateo Week, we call it. Brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Trade over 10,000 U.S. stocks and ETFs, U.S. equity index options, United States treasuries, and more on your timetable. Learn more at ibkr.com/around the clock. Lisa, what do you have?
I have all the scams that are happening this holiday season to steal your money. I don't know if you've gotten some of those weird text messages, like click the link, all that kind of stuff. Well, they're using AI to do a lot of this stuff, and that's why you see it a lot more this season. They're doing the text messages, right? The baiting victims to write programs, testing huge volumes of stolen credit card information. They're helping scammers generate fake online ads, so you're seeing more online ads. So the fake ones to click the link and then they steal your credit card information. They're using AI to impersonate account holders, so they're pretending to be you so that they can get your access to different accounts. So they're doing that too. And then they're also asking for video selfies, because then they can use that to get access to different things, because people are just sending them in. Because if you get locked out sometimes of your account, you need to send a video selfie.
And they're faking to be banks.
And they're faking all this. And the banks are putting money using AI to help fight this, but yet it's happening so fast.
It's really picked up. It's a really serious thing.
I just send money to people who they're buying oil. That's I'm pretty comfortable doing that. So,
but it's gone. We're a long way, Lisa, from emails from Nigeria.
Right.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah.
The code thingies. The kids use the code. I don't do that ever anymore, because they put the sticker that looks just like the code you think you're doing, and it's not. It's like a scam. So I never do the code thing anymore, ever.
Yeah, it's tough. And especially this time, you see a lot of the, your package is being held, and everyone has packages at the door. That's another scam.
One of our interns, he's like 23, Ari, just nailed that. Yeah. The QR code, you old fossil. Right? Next.
I'm sitting here, I'm going,
Ari, have some more eggnog. Next.
The QR code. Now I got you. Okay, Apple is considering something. You have the Ring, right? That's what a lot of people have, the doorbell. When you come in there, so they have that. But now Apple wants to challenge that with their smart doorbell that will actually unlock the door with your face. So instead of the keys or punching in the numbers sometimes people have, you just put your face up to it, and then your door would unlock and you can go inside. So that's something that Apple could be working on, this from Bloomberg, into the new year. So it's a new way to get into your house. But they're trying different things. Like Apple's trying to catch up. Remember the whole car they tried doing just fell apart.
Do we want this?
I don't know.
Do you have Alexa, we're going to Costco. Does the Mateo house
I
have
do
that?
not have Alexa. No, I don't. But this is, I don't know. It seems like it would make getting into your house easier, but it's kind of scary too at the same time. I don't know.
So if the nanny's locked outside with 2 dogs and needs to get in, she can't get in because it's my ugly face. I don't get
unless you add the nanny to,
What do you think, Paul?
the security list.
I'll stick with my key.
You'll stick with your key?
Yeah.
I can bumble with the packages and do all that at the same time
Next.
with the key. Okay, New York City's new secret weapon in the war on rats. It is a dog named Katie, okay? Katie is a 4-year-old, 12.5-pound mutt. She's part Chihuahua, part pug, part rat terrier. And her owner says that she takes her out. This is in around Prospect Park, where they say they don't have a lot of rats, but apparently they do because Katie sniffs them out, snatches them up in her drawer, cracks their neck, then the owner takes them and dumps them in a garbage can. So here's the thing. In 2023, Katie bagged about 115 rats.
Really?
About a week ago to this year, she has a week left, closing in on 500. So
wow.
This dog has been doing a lot of stuff, I guess, around the area. Prospect Park, Park Slope, Gowanus. Her most productive week is Thursday for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe that's when the rats come out and play. But the owner says sometimes she does get, little scratches and things like that. But she does get her vaccinated so that she won't get sick if she does get bit by the rats. But I don't know. It
Serious
just goes
stuff.
to show you
Serious
how bad the rat problem is
And
in
there's
New
a
York City.
color-coded Google map
Yes.
titled Katie's Rats 2024. So you can follow her as she goes around in her duties. Okay.
Yeah.
Got one more for us?
I do. Okay, so this is, if you have kids listening in the background for any reason, just earmuffs, okay? I'll give you a couple minutes, okay? All right, here we go. Holiday fixture, the elf on the shelf. This is what a lot of parents do. I remember doing it with my kids. It's meant to keep an eye on the shelf. You have this little elf, and every night the elf goes back to Santa, tells him who's been good or bad, gives them the full breakdown, and then comes back. This is all
that's
before
the story.
Christmas. This is
Okay.
the story, okay? So parents have been, they have to figure out a different storyline every day, and it's a lot of work because they have to move the elf, and if you forget, then the kid's going to ask, why didn't the elf move? It's this whole big thing. So now a lot of parents are starting to say, you know what? I'm sick of the elf. I'm not doing it. And now what they have to do is explain to their kids why the elf isn't coming to their house. This is like this whole drawn out drama because all the other kids have the elf. So, Mommy, how come my elf is not coming to my house?
Am I lucky that I missed this?
You are lucky because it's a lot of work. It just started when my kids were, younger, but now it's become a social media thing. So now people are posting all, the different funny things they're doing with the elf, the next day. And it's become this huge responsibility for them to do. And
I got the tree,
I just
the
don't
stockings.
have the patience for that.
I'm good. All right.
But it's the elf on the shelf. I actually have, since my kids are older, I have Snoop on the stoop. Snoop Dogg has one. so I use that in my house. Snoop on the stoop.
Wait a minute. We got to go around. I have a real tree. You don't have a real tree.
No, I have the fake tree. Yes, I put it up.
You have a real
tree. You do the real?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God for that.
Yep.
Yes, yes. It's a lot of work. Parents are stressed out enough as it is, and they say they don't need this extra burden on their hands.
When we do this tomorrow, find an eggnog story.
Thank you, I will.
Lisa Mateo, thank you so much. The newspapers here, and of course, across the nation for all of you as well. It is -4 degrees on Mount Katahdin. Heat wave in Millinocket. It's 7 degrees. Good morning. 92.9 FM Boston down to 99.1 FM Washington. Across a frigid America, even LA is frigid. It's like the 50s. It doesn't get up to 65.
No, it was a little chilly in Florida. I was watching some golf over the weekend.
They're up Topanga Canyon wearing mink stoles.
Right.
It's that cold out. The mothers and the fathers, stay with us on YouTube.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
I'm sorry, it's a boom economy, and that's what we're adjusting to.
Neither party seems to want to take on deficits at all.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
Stocks are coming off of another record high.
And Michael Barr with news.
Tensions between the U.S. and China have heated up even more.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Paul Sweeney, Tom Keene, Michael Barr, Lisa Mateo. We are all here to get you into an interesting week, to say the least. So much going on in economics, finance, investment, international relations. I thought Tina Fordham was lights out about the summation of the tensions here.
Yeah.
Into the new year, the Trump inauguration will be a big deal.
I think our clients are, they're asking her about some of the geopolitical risks, and if you have a Trump administration, what does that mean going forward for the next 4 years?
Didn't mention in the last hour, one of the geopolitical risks, SAS hour has been better than good on this. DXY, 108. I'm sorry. That's like the biggest item on the Bloomberg right now.
Yeah, the dollar strength. I mean, it's just, across all the major currencies, it's been about the dollar. It looks like the Fed will be cutting at a much slower rate than maybe initially thought there. So,
do we get, I'm looking right now, excuse me, folks, when I don't know what I'm doing, I go ECO go.
Yes.
We have economic news.
We do.
On the 23rd. Into the 24th. There's a plethora of news.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not a lot, but it's enough.
Some durable goods orders, capital goods orders.
Building permits. What do you see in housing? Mortgages, 9%?
Yeah, I mean, 6 and change here. So, I mean, it's just, if you're looking to move out of your existing home and your 3% mortgage, that's a shock.
I hear that from a lot of people now. It's like, we can sell and make a pile.
Yep.
But where are we going?
Exactly. Where do we go, and how much is it going to cost us to go to the new place?
We say good morning to all of you, of course, on YouTube and across the nation. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning, and we thank IBKR. Bloomberg Surveillance brought to you by Interactive Brokers. Financial advisors switch to Interactive Brokers for lowest cost global trading and turnkey custody solutions. No ticket charges, no conflicts of your interest at ibkr.com/RIA. And we thank them for their support as well. Why don't we do this on the Amanda Lynam's coming up? That'll be
absolutely
good. Let's go to the Interactive Broker Studios now. The Bloomberg Business Flash, Lisa Mateo.
And we've still got futures mix. This is after a year-end shutdown was avoided. NASDAQ futures up 0.4%, 89 points. Dow futures down 0.2%, 111 points. And S&P futures little changed, up about 4. We have the 2-year yield, 4.32%. That's up 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year, 4.55%. And that's up 2 basis points. To currencies, we have the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up about 0.3%. The Japanese yen down about 0.5% at 157.17 against the dollar. We have the euro, British pound weaker. Bitcoin up more than 1% at just over 96,000. Few companies making news. Honda and Nissan, they have agreed to start merger talks, form a holding company they plan to list by August of 2026. Honda will buy back as much as $7 billion of its own shares. You have Honda up 3% in Japan, Nissan up more than 1%. Rupert Murdoch's News Corp, it's agreed to sell Foxtel Group. It's to a sports platform, DAZN Group, deal that values it as an Australian paid TV streaming service at $2.1 billion. And finally, Xerox agreed to buy Lexmark. It's a deal valued at $1.5 billion. Xerox shares up about 7%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Xerox, I've never understood. I remember the CEO was here, and I had a long conversation with her. This is years and years and years ago. I mean, did they still make copiers?
I think so. Printers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's I'm going to say a shell of itself, I guess is kind of the way I would say.
They were in Webster, New York. This is east of Rochester.
Yeah.
And there was the Xerox Tower downtown.
Right.
And I have to read in on this. I just really don't know.
They have $1 billion market cap. Okay. Stock's down 54% year to date. All those
like
trading higher today.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Lisa, thank you so much for that. We say good morning to all. We're on YouTube. Good morning, Brazil. Good morning, London. Great to have you out on YouTube. After your commute, watch YouTube in your office like Amanda Lynam, head of macro credit research at BlackRock. She's wicked work from home today. Amanda, the outlook for next year for BlackRock, Wei Lee, who's doing a different act than you, she says, forget about mean reversion. There's going to be a transformation to something new and different. What is a transformation to something new and different in macro credit next year?
Well, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for having me. Look, so our colleagues in the BlackRock Investment Institute are reflecting a paradigm shift in the financing environment, which involves the corporate credit markets. I think at a very high level, importantly, they're recommending staying pro-risk for now at least, but also recognizing that some of these long-term structural shifts that are happening in the economy, I would put artificial intelligence at the top of that list, will require trillions of funding from now until 2030. And that's going to be a quantum of investment that is above and beyond what governments, companies can do on their own. And we see a role for private markets in particular on the debt side to play an important role in that. I would say our outlook from my team for first quarter of 2025 is very consistent, cautiously optimistic, which I'm happy to discuss. But there's an opportunity cost for being materially underweight risk.
I'm fascinated, Amanda, and with your experience, if we're pro-risk, are we leveraging up once again? I mean, Robin Wigglesworth had that brilliant synthetic risk thing 5, 6, 7 days ago. It reminded me of Gillian Tett and CDO Squares. Mark Pittman, the late, great Mark Pittman at Bloomberg, writing about this. Amanda Lynam, all we're doing is leveraging up again into trouble?
No, I actually, if you look at the top performers of the market so far in 2024, it's as you highlighted earlier this morning, leverage loans, high yield. Those are index level products. Of course, the companies have leverage in their capital structures, but they're not adding leverage on top of those products to generate those returns. It was really just a reflection of recession risk is very low. The economy is growing above trend. And as a result, investors are comfortable moving down the quality spectrum, which also, by the way, gives them less duration exposure, which has been a headwind in 2024. The point that you're looking at is kind of this evolution of the financing markets as we move through maybe to a new regime. I think the one point that gives us a lot of comfort is that in private credit in particular, the experienced managers have generated the lion's share of financing since the Fed started hiking rates. Actually, 86% of fundraising in private credit has gone to managers that have 4 or more vintages under their belt. And so that, to us, reflects the fact that investors are still very discerning as to where they're allocating capital as the cost of capital is no longer free.
Amanda, as head of macro credit research at BlackRock, what is your view of private credit? It's a market that's just been growing dramatically. How do you guys think about that?
Absolutely. So we think that we are far from saturated in terms of the growth prospects of this asset class. There are really multifaceted growth drivers. To name them quickly, investors looking for diversification and I would say increased comfort with the asset class, borrowers looking for certainty of execution and flexibility, structural shifts in the public debt and equity markets, which I don't think are actually talked about enough in this conversation. And then fourth is ongoing selectivity in bank lending. If I had to distill it very simply, it would be that the definition of private credit is changing, and also the addressable market of both investors and borrowers is expanding. And so we think that there's a lot of room to grow in the traditional definition of private credit, which is lending to middle market companies. But then also beyond that, financing some of these longer term structural shifts in the economy that I mentioned earlier, where it may not be the best place for that loan to live on the banking system balance sheet, even though maybe the bank originates it, for example. So a lot more partnerships between banks and non-banks. And I think, again, it's a bit of a regime shift in terms of how the financing markets are working. But importantly, we view that as a net positive for financial stability, that there's a third and viable funding option for a wide range of borrowers in private credit to sit alongside the public debt and equity markets and the banking channel. And I think that's a good thing for the broader ecosystem.
Do you have any concerns about the regulatory oversight of private credit? Some folks are suggesting that maybe it doesn't have the same rigorous oversight than, say, maybe the corporate bond market or the banking system.
Sure. So behind a lot of the private credit managers are asset managers, which are regulated in their own right, just in a different way relative to the prudential banking system regulations of the SIFIs, for example, on the banking side. I think what's really important, though, as this market expands is, one, we need to preserve vigor around valuations and discipline. Again, speaking to that point about how the more experienced managers are capturing most of the fundraising, I think that's case in point. And then second is, as it expands to a wide range of investors, we need to make sure that investors investors are fully aware and educated on the illiquidity risks, right? So this is an illiquid asset class. It does not trade like a bond or a stock in the typical way. And so it needs to be appropriate for investors that really have the ability to take that kind of years-long investment. Now, I would say products are evolving to give investors more access in a more simplified way, which again, we expect more room for that to grow. But in general, the education will remain paramount for sure.
Amanda, thank you so much. Amanda Lynam with us with BlackRock here on fixed income and the way forward. Some nice sophisticated outlooks. Jeffrey Rosenberg actually did well as well.
Okay.
He doesn't look out as far as Amanda Lynam, but he did well as well. Amanda, thank you so much for that. Red and green on the screen right now. I'm looking at the 10-year real yield rounded up 2.24%. With our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom. Paul, Lisa, President-elect Trump is hitting back at the idea that he's handing the presidency to Elon Musk. He spoke at a conservative conference in Phoenix over the weekend. Wendy Schiller is the political science chair at Brown University.
Part of this is Democratic pushing buttons. They understand that it really irritates Trump to be told that he's being controlled by somebody else. So there's a co-presidency. Trump is extremely proud of his comeback, losing the president. Grover Cleveland did it more than 100 years ago. But losing and then coming back and winning is something that he attributes to himself.
Wendy Schiller is director of the Alfred Taubman Center for American Politics and Policy at Brown University. President Biden is granting clemency to 37 of the 40 people facing death row in federal custody. Loyola Law School professor Jessica Levinson.
President Biden made abolishing the death penalty part of his 2020 campaign, but didn't do a ton to implement that campaign promise. In 2021, he did order the Department of Justice to institute a pause on federal executions while they reviewed policies and procedures.
Professor Levinson spoke to CBS. The three people who remain on death row are the people convicted for the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh, the Mother Emanuel Church shooting in Charleston, South Carolina, and the Boston Marathon bombing. Amtrak railway service across the Northeast Corridor faces delays and cancellations today, causing chaos for passengers traveling ahead of the holidays. According to a statement on Amtrak's website, travelers should expect a significant delay in and out of New York Penn Station as the rail network seeks to recover from signal power issues. Amtrak also says that due to equipment unavailability, 2 Acela trains are canceled between Boston and Washington. Meanwhile, road and airports will be busy today and throughout the holidays. Global news 24 hours a day and whenever you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Michael Barr, and this is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. Good morning to all of you out on YouTube. I did this once, years, like 4 lives ago. I drove Dallas to Laredo and into Mexico.
Wow.
And you go down Waco, and then there's the Michael Dell City, Austin, and San Antonio. Good morning, Keene, Texas.
Keene.
I don't know how they pronounce it, but it's there. Are you ready for this?
Yeah.
The timber rattlesnake can be commonly found in homes, commercial and industrial areas of Keene. If you encounter a snake, you should immediately distance yourself from the rattlesnake. That's new. That's AI helping me out.
You don't have to tell me to distance myself if I see a rattlesnake in my house.
I mean, that's why I live here. There's no snakes. I mean, we have to, we got other things to worry about. But
we got alligators in the sewers.
Could you imagine you're in your garage and you hear? I've never heard. Have you heard a rattlesnake?
No,
I've never heard one.
No.
We
got enough problems here in New York.
Good morning, Texas. I think. Be safe out there. Even what do they do in the cold? It's not cold there. It's 70. Good morning.
It's just north of Austin. Okay, I see.
North
Keene.
Austin.
Okay,
Keene, Texas on YouTube. Thank you for listening, John. Futures up to from New York City, snake free. Bloomberg surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This Futures Report sponsored by IBKR. Markets never sleep and neither does Interactive Brokers. Discover opportunities with CME Group futures across equity indices, interest rates, FX, energy, and more. Access CME futures around the clock at Interactive Brokers. All right, we've got futures mixed, and this is just as traders start to assess the outlook for economic growth, interest rates on the economic calendar for today. Well, we just heard about November building permits. They were revised down to 1.493 million from 1.505 million. Now, in about 15 minutes from now, we'll get durable goods orders. Then at 10 o'clock Wall Street time, it's new home sales and this month's consumer confidence report from the Conference Board. NASDAQ futures up 0.4%, 91 points. Dow futures down 0.2%, 116 points. And S&P futures little changed, up about 3. The 2-year yield at 4.32%. That's little changed. And the yield on the 10-year 4.55%. And that's up 2 basis points. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up 0.4%. Few companies making news. Palantir, Anduril reportedly in talks to partner with rivals. They want to make joint bids for U.S. government work. That's according to the Financial Times. You have Palantir up about 1%. Universal Music Group, that's a company behind artists like Taylor Swift, Drake. Well, they have expanded its global partnership with Amazon Music. That's to help boost fan engagement and also fraud protection. And finally, Hyatt Hotels, exclusive talks with Playa Hotels and Resorts. It's over options that may include a sale. Now, a deal would get Hyatt more expansion to beachfront and all-inclusive resorts. You have Playa up about 17% and Hyatt up 3%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. Wherever you get your podcasts, I'm Lisa Mateo. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Lisa, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate it. Red and green on the screen this morning. Churn of the market, but the VIX has shifted 14, 13. Did we get a 12? I think in the, maybe we did.
Yep.
18.48, a higher statistic is more angst in the market. A perfect time to speak to Lori Calvasina, who's noted RBC Capital Markets reads like behavioral finance. She's really like listening to Europe, listening to Canada. What about U.S. exuberance? And, I would go, Lori, to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where Newman and Redford are looking across the valley going, who are those guys? Who is bidding the stock market higher up the SPX 6000?
Hi, Tom. So look, it's a great question. I'll tell you, when I got back from Europe, I was there for a week, and did the typical sell side death march of, however many cities in 4 days it was.
The romance.
Oh, yeah. No, but it's a great time of year to be there. There's some of my favorite investors to talk to because they just have such great perspective. And I did get to the end of that week and I said, I don't know who's buying this market. I will say when I got back to the States that I did see, some of what I heard in Europe, I've been hearing here. In other instances, there was just sort of a much more rosy view. So I do think things are a bit more mixed here. But I think the reality, when that Fed meeting happened last week, and, concerns about inflation are being rekindled. I was just sort of laughing in my head a little bit because I'd gotten an earful about that exact topic in Europe the prior week. And so, maybe the answer to the question, Tom, is the people who were buying it were the people who were selling it after the FOMC meeting. And that was certainly, I think the Europeans were already maybe inclined to do that, but I think they'd already been sort of sitting on the sidelines.
And Lori, what we've heard, I think, over the last several weeks, if several months, has been international investors have been coming into the U.S. market, and in fact, they are the ones pushing this market higher to some degree. Is that what you heard and learned?
So what I heard was a begrudging acceptance of continued momentum in the stock market in the short term. And to be clear, thinking that the U.S. is better off from Europe. But at the same time, that was there was sort of an undercurrent of cautiousness from the European investors I spoke with. And, they were concerned about sentiment getting too frothy. They were concerned about valuations being too high. When we talked about triggers, they were talking about the potential, to coming to the end of the cutting cycle, higher inflation. They were also looking askance at American policies saying, what are we missing on tariffs? What are we missing on tax? I think one client put it to me, they said, well, we think tax is more complicated than what's being baked into markets currently. And I think that's quite accurate. And then the other thing they sort of said on tariffs is, that the market is acting like we're not going to get broad-based tariffs. And they said, sort of, where do you fall on that? And I said, well, look, I've seen some numbers running around saying maybe 30% chance of that. I said, I think it's more like 50-50. 50. So it feels like an underpriced risk to me. But there was, Paul, to be fair, sort of this sense of this thing can keep, climbing for a while, but we are worried about a pullback coming, before too long.
So, one of the things we've noticed is some of the Mag 7 leadership themes coming back into the market over the last couple of months. Is that something that you recognize? Is it something you think could continue into 2025? Because for a lot of investors, boy, if these Mag 7 big tech names aren't leading the market, I'm not sure what will.
So it's interesting, Paul. In our year ahead outlook, we said, we basically took a neutral stance on small cap versus large cap, which is one of the flip sides of that Mag 7 coin.
Mm.
But on the sort of growth versus value trade directly, we said, look, we give an edge to value, but it feels like a very slight edge. And, we sort of said, look, mega cap growth is crowded. It's expensive. It's got decelerating earnings growth, but at the same time, it does continue to have dominant earnings growth relative to value. And until that really changes, which probably doesn't change until you get a really hot economy closer to 3 than 2% GDP, you're probably going to see a continued tug of war. And guess what? Over the last week or so, in particular, growth has really fought back. And, I think part of it is that with the sort of Fed coming to the end of that cutting cycle, maybe people are a little less inclined to take their 2% GDP forecasts up to 3. When inflation is coming back into the conversation, you get more concerns about stagflation. And I do think that benefits the big cap growth names who, by the way, don't really have much net debt. So if you start to get worried about interest rates again, that's where you'd want to go. So I think this is going to be a continued tug of war. I think it's going to be very tough to get a clean break for a while.
Lori, I lived the roll-up era. Actually, there were 1, 2, 3 roll-up eras, but people are saying M&A activity, it's sort of a mystery. Do we just get one roll-up of the Russell 2000? Do small companies just throw in the towel and get the urge to, not merge, but the urge to roll up into something bigger?
So you may, and I think it may, depend on what sector you're looking at. For example, if you're looking at banks, I think a lot of small cap investors, would tell you for quite some time, there are just too many small and mid-sized regional banks out there. I think the industrial sector is another one where we often will sort of hear the M&A hopes and dreams come back. And I think the sort of roll-up opportunities in particular. Look, Tom, M&A is something that I think is a real driver for next year. Certainly, if you sort of look at the pricing of investment banks, they've gotten pretty expensive pretty fast. And when we've gone through transcripts, we've heard a lot of optimism around M&A. I think the reality, though, is, Tom, that we really have to see it happen. And as I was talking about this with clients over the last few weeks, we said, look, it probably, they need a little while to do their due diligence and get the deals done. But 2Q feels like the time this should start to show up, or we're all going to feel like it was a head fake.
I got a Russell 2000, 10 years with dividends reinvested, of, to be charitable, 7.8% per year. That's just not acceptable, is it?
Well, look, small caps have gotten complicated, Tom, and it really depends on what part of small cap you're looking at. When I talk to small cap PMs, there's a large chunk of the index that's sort of uninvestable. And this is going to be, certain industries. I'll pick on REITs for a moment. I know there are, plenty of dedicated REITs investors out there, but your typical small cap generalist PM, that's just not something they like to play in. And so, one thing, to be honest, Tom, that I hear about all the time is the low earnings quality of small cap. Almost half of the companies in the Russell 2000 don't make any profits.
There you go.
And that is something that turns off multi-asset investors. It turns off private bank. It turns off high net worth retail. Active guys can work around it, but people who are buying the asset class broadly, it's a real problem and a real hindrance.
Lori, thank you. Lori Calvasina with this nice brief there with RBC at Capital Markets. Thanks for the comments, really all around the world on temperature out there. Some people enjoying a balmy day. Robert is up in Connecticut. It's like I can't afford to go there. Litchfield.
Oh yeah, that's
Litchfield
nice.
Hills is like fancy.
Yep.
And he says, look, the internet says 8 degrees in Litchfield. He's got a weather system in his house. It's like what they use at Newark. And he's got -1 degrees. And in the background behind his weather station, you can see the ice rink.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know that Bob in Litchfield has not 1 but 2 on the deck NHL regulation hockey goals in his backyard, popping $860 each?
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
That's how you do it.
He's like a goalie. I get Bob. Thank you, goalie from Connecticut. -1 degrees. It's Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Well, we got a little mix of red and green on the screen. This is in this holiday shortened trading week as the major U.S. stock indexes, well, they're coming off their worst week since mid-November. NASDAQ futures leading the charge up about 0.4%, 93 points. Dow futures down 0.2%, 107 points. S&P futures little changed, up about 3. The 2-year yield 4.31%. That's little changed, and the yield on the 10-year 4.54%, and that's up 2 basis points. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index, that is up about 0.3%. We have some more economic data out. We'll start with durable goods orders for November. The survey was for a drop of 0.3%, came in at a drop of 1.1%. At 10 a.m. Wall Street time, we get new home sales, also a read on confidence from the Conference Board. Few stocks on the move this morning. Video sharing platform Rumble, they're up 41%. It said that Tether is set to acquire a stake in the company. That's the reason for that. And then stocks linked to quantum computing, they're on the rise. This is over optimism over Alphabet's Willow chip capabilities. So, for example, D-Wave Quantum up 21%, Rigetti Computing up 6%, Quantum Computing up 14%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. Bloomberg Surveillance across this nation, brought to you by IBKR Financial Advisors. Switch to Interactive Brokers for lowest cost global trading and turnkey custody solutions. There are no ticket charges. There are no conflicts of your interest at ibkr.com/RIA. And we thank them for helping us out each day. I looked at Instagram yesterday. I'm not out on Instagram for a lot of complex reasons, but I got one of those hidden accounts. And it's just not the same Instagram as it used to be. I'm out on Twitter. I find a lot of good uses of Twitter, but there's a lot of garbage out there as well. We all know that. And then there's a strange thing by LinkedIn. Paul, I don't think many people know LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft. Yeah. I don't think many people know that. And LinkedIn, I found when I came back to it, I left it, came back to it, and it's a huge value. For those of you that want to keep up with what's going on in our politics, our polity, you can do no better than follow Terry Haynes on LinkedIn. Sometimes he takes like a week off. You know, it's like work from home, work from Caribbean. Other times he writes 3 notes in one day, and whether you agree or disagree with him, he gets the brain going. Mr. Haynes joins us right now. He's bundled up. For those of you on radio, it's like with the cutbacks in Washington, they turn the heat off. Joining us, Terry Haynes from Pangea. Terry, I just want to cut to the chase. It's the zeitgeist, but it's legitimate. Is the billionaire of the United States a co-president, a sort of president? How's this going to end up, say, March of next year?
Let me simplify it for you, Tom, and thank you for noticing my Norwegian finance bro attire this morning. Cut to it. Look, there are two kinds of people in politics. There's principals, people who are elected to things, and staff, people who aren't. I've been staff. I know the difference. Mr. Musk is finding that out, and I think you saw just as quickly as he ramped up to the spinal tap, take it up to 11. All of a sudden, he went away. And what I think is there is he's going to be directed in certain ways. He's going to have his areas of responsibility. But I think probably what happened is he got told by Trump or somebody close to Trump, like, enough already. And so I think you see a little bit more circumscribed Musk from here on out.
Erin Covey, writing it up at the Political Report, she says it's a House is narrow back to 1932. Young Haynes was a page there at the time, back to 1932. And Aaron lines up Republicans in Democratic districts, Democrats in Republican districts. I get it, but like near Kansas City, there's a Republican congressperson going, what are you doing in Washington? What is the centrist angst of Republicans and Democrats right now, Terry?
Well, people focus on the 38 Republicans that voted against Trump, but I guarantee you those 38 are only the ones who felt comfortable, being out there. That the sentiment that they express about this is shared by pretty much every Republican and probably a lot of Democrats too. So, the damage Musk is doing to Trump in the Congress is really that. They trust him less. They trust Musk not at all. And it's depriving him of the opportunity maybe to not only bring Republicans together more quickly, but also to get some of those centrist Democrats. So it's a worse problem than I think people understand.
So what did we learn, Terry, from the budget deal last week? It seemed like President-elect Trump, kind of tried to weigh in, make some moves, but it didn't really happen along his lines. What do we take away from all that?
What we take away from all that is that the lens through which much of the market looks at this stuff, which is Trump imposing his will on Washington and a craven Congress eager to satisfy him, is completely wrong. I've always said it was wrong, but I mean, it's completely wrong. The Congress not only is a co-equal branch of government, it considers itself to be. And a lot of what Trump wants to get done will be more difficult. Now, with that, I don't think that includes the tax law, because Congress is as invested or more invested than Trump is to want to do something on the tax law, extending the 2017 tax law this coming year. And they will do it for their own reasons in their own way. And, frankly, they've got the pen much more than Trump has.
So given that backdrop, Terry, what do you think the first 100 days are for this administration? What are you going to be focusing on?
I think what happens is, for most people, I think it's quite unexpected. But if you consider the geopolitical backdrop, it isn't unexpected at all. And we've seen some precursors to it just in the last 48 hours. I think there's going to be much bigger focus on defense spending, national security than people understand. Biden really tried to soft pedal that a lot. I think Trump is going to be much more forthright about it. And what you're hearing when he's talking about what you should be hearing when he's talking about the Panama Canal, when he's talking about Greenland, when he's talking about other things, is really trying to secure the defense perimeter of the United States as much as anything else. So I think markets are going to be a little taken aback with just how serious the geopolitical situation intrudes into the Washington debate.
Do we have, and I asked this to Tina Fordham earlier, Terry Haynes, about ambassadors. Do we have a State Department forming that can provide diplomatic guidance to the president-elect?
Yeah, I think so, but I think it's very much a work in progress, and it's in the early stages. The thing that concerned me most over the weekend is the way that the shambolic way that the U.S.-UK relationship is developing, and mistakes are being made on both sides. Musk is making a mistake by essentially dissing the established political parties in the UK that Trump needs by saying he's going to provide reforms Farage with $100 million. At the same time, Starmer's making a huge mistake with basically setting up a co-ambassadorship in Washington between Mandelson and Farage. So, I don't know what's going to happen there.
Right.
But, this is the worst crisis we've seen since, Love Actually's UK prime minister dissed the U.S. president.
Right. Terry, just one he's like...
Thank you, Paul.
Yes,
he falls apart when it gets cold. Terry, one final question. I was pontificating to afterthought and urchins this weekend that presidents are defined by the first big surprise. We are forever formed by George Bush the Younger, someone whispering his ears about fires and planes and skyscrapers in southern Manhattan. How will this president react when someone whispers in his ear of those the shocking events that can happen to any president?
I think he'll react with resolve and definition. The problem, the issue with Trump may be a little bit too much of those things, though, and it remains to be seen yet whether he's got somebody that can actually pull him back, whether he's got a BS detector, which everybody needs to be able to say no, don't do that. Frankly, Biden didn't have those people, and it contributed massively to everything that happened from Afghanistan forward.
Terry, got to leave it there. We have huge breaking news. Mr. Haynes, can't say enough about it, folks. The single reason to sign up for LinkedIn is to get the Terry Haynes feed. It's really, really quite something how he commits to informing out on LinkedIn. Pangea, I should say, is his shop. Terry Haynes, thank you so much. A lot of people, Paul, are saying, finally, Nordstrom's, the family, will take it private.
Yeah, so the Nordstrom family to take the company private in a $6.25 billion transaction. Nordstrom is going private, an all-cash transaction valued at about $6.25 billion in a bet by the founding family, Tom, that the department store company will be more successful without the scrutiny and demands of the public
headlines
market.
say Liverpool. I want to make clear that's not the football team that did it to the Tots this weekend. That's La Puerto to Liverpool, a Mexican department store shop. They will take 49.9. The family will keep 50.1. We'll have much more on this. And in an hour, Dana Telsey will join us from Telsey Advisories, who's truly expert on this. Nordstrom's to go private. Right now, with our news in New York City, Michael Barr.
Thank you very much, Tom, Paul, Lisa. President-elect Donald Trump says he will be president of the U.S., not Elon Musk. Speaking to a conservative audience in Phoenix, Trump said that he has talked about the presidency to Musk as a hoax, saying it's not happening.
And I'm safe. You know why? He can't be. He wasn't born in this country.
Trump was addressing growing complaints about the outsized role the Tesla boss has already had in his upcoming administration. With less than a month before leaving office, President Biden has commuted the death sentences of nearly all the inmates on federal death row. Instead of execution, the 37 inmates will now serve life sentences without the possibility of parole. Now, only 3 men will remain on federal death row, including one of the Boston Marathon bombers and 2 mass shooters. Amtrak railway service across the Northeast Corridor faces delays and cancellations today, causing chaos for passengers traveling ahead of the holidays. According to Amtrak's website, travelers should expect a significant delay in and out of New York Penn Station as the rail network seeks to recover from signal power issues. Some parts of the corridor experienced service suspensions yesterday. Global news, 24 hours a day and whenever you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Tom, Paul, Lisa.
Michael Barr, thanks so much. In Manhattan, there was Nordstrom's over by the Deutsche Bank building, as they call it, the Time Warner Center.
Yep.
And it has just been a struggle for years. Paul, 10-year track record, negative 8.7% with dividends reinvested, trading pretty much near COVID lows, plus or minus.
Yep.
A little bit of noise. And is it just finally, I guess the family takes 50.1%. I guess they still control it, but I don't buy it for a minute.
No, so we'll talk to Dana Telsey. I mean, the absolute axe on this name and all things retail later. But the chart is just brutal, and it kind of goes to what we've seen from a lot of those department store chains. It's tough business, really, over the last 20, 30 years, you would argue, for some of these department stores, as the e-commerce has come into the play here.
We will have to see. Red on the screen now, negative 13. The VIX, 18.95. We'll get a 19 print on the VIX here in a moment. Bloomberg Surveillance, we're brought to you by PIMCO, a global leader in active fixed income for over 50 years with deep expertise across public and private markets. Learn more at PIMCO.com. PIMCO. And thank you, PIMCO, for Tiffany Wilding's support.
Yep.
Jerome Schneider and others giving us wisdom as well. Special note, you get lucky. Paul will tell you about it. Anton Posner, with real experience on the Panama Canal, will be with us. That's really cool.
That's great.
Very good.
And she's got some
Dana
direct
Telsey on
experience.
Nordstrom the next hour. Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Futures are mixed, and this is after President Joe Biden signed funding legislation to keep the U.S. government operating until mid-March. NASDAQ futures little changed, up about 10 points. Dow futures down 0.4%, 211 points. S&P futures down 0.2%, or 12 points. The two-year yield at 4.31%, that's little changed, and the yield on the 10-year 4.54%, and that's up 2 basis points. To commodities, Brent crude $72 a barrel, WTI crude $69 a barrel. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up about 0.3%. Few companies making news. Well, you just heard it here. Nordstrom going private, an all-cash transaction valued at about $6.25 billion. Its shares down about 1%. And sources say U.S. insurer MetLife nearing a deal to buy Pine Bridge Investments assets outside of China from Hong Kong billionaire Richard Lee's Pacific Century Group. And some more deal-making. Shares of Latin American online travel agency Despegar.com, they're on the rise, up 33%. And that's because Prosus entered into a definitive agreement to acquire that booking site. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. You get lucky in this business. What we find out time and time again is we just try to book with our team of interns the best people we can get. We've got a great week for you here today. Dana Telsey on Nordstrom in the next hour. But you go, yeah, let's get Anton Posner in, New York Maritime College and the Merchant Marine, a third mate. Like, he's actually, been on the bow of one of those ships when you're like, really? Yeah. And he joins us today, and of course everything's changed because the 52nd straight after we take Canada. First you take Canada, then you take Panama. Anton Posner joins us from Mercury Resources with your experience with the Panama Canal. I would guess 105% of our listeners and viewers that, Anton, our knowledge is David McCullough and Teddy Roosevelt with a big stick, and we get to the last chapter in that magisterial book on Panama and the canal where it's a triumph for America. How distant are we from the triumph of America that we still carry with us on the Isthmus of Panama?
Yeah, good morning, guys. Well, talk about being able to talk about a topic that came up quite relevant yesterday, right? So I whipped out some old picks for you guys too. We're quite a distant at this point from the infrastructure investments that the United States was making back in the time when we built that canal. So time to get back into the business of engaging with the world and making sure that we're investing in critical supply chain infrastructure globally. The Panama Canal, great triumph, right, as you said. So,
I mean, again, everything I've learned about the Panama Canal is from the book David McCullough's The Path Between the Seas, talking about the creation of the Panama. You transited the Panama Canal. Tell us about that. Why were you in the Panama Canal?
Sure. So it was Christmas break while I was at New York Maritime College, 1992, 1991. They had a program there. We typically go out on the training ship that was operated by the school, but you had the option of also going out on a real merchant ship. So I went out there. I am.
Whoa, on radio, you're not seeing this. It's a cut and chiseled antenna.
That's right. I said when Bob, the producer, said he wanted to show the pictures, I said, "You mean you want to show a young, thin, good-looking Anton to the world?" Yeah, we could do that. I'm okay with that. Sure. So I went out. I signed up and went out on the Navy Military Sea Lift Command tanker, the USNS Sea Lift Arabian Sea. Got on the ship in Houston, Deer Park, Texas. Thought we were going to be going to Florida to bring jet fuel to the Navy base at Key West and Jacksonville for naval aviation. And the captain said, "We just got orders changed. We're heading to Panama." So I said, "All right." Well, I had brought gear for cold weather and had to go run out to the mall and buy shorts and
Do
stuff.
we still use it now? I mean, I'm sure myself and the president-elect have an image of, it's like in Mary Poppins, Railways to India. There's Lake Gatun, Gatun, which is the water level maker, and there's a drought in Panama.
Right.
So are we putting ships through still like we used to?
Oh, absolutely. Actually, the drought has eased up. Ships are moving more along normal at this point. I think normal, off the top of my head, I think we're 40 ships a day moving through. It is a huge savings to go through the canal versus going around.
Is that a vital interest of America that 40 ships go through, or is it from a movie set from another time and place?
Absolutely critical, vital to be able to send warships, cargo ships to deal with national emergencies much faster than having to go around. Southern tip of South America is vital and critical to American national security. Same thing with the Suez Canal, what we're seeing with the Houthis in the Middle East too. That those ships needing to steam around the Cape of Good Hope around southern tip of Africa is causing huge cost implications, but also national security.
MAP Go, MAP Go on your Bloomberg terminal. You can click on vessels, and it'll show you all the vessels around the world where they are, and you zone in on the Panama Canal. There are ships in the Panama Canal as we speak, transiting back and forth. I guess we learned when the port strike on the West Coast happened, and people had to reroute their ships to the East Coast. Man, those canals are really important.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I'm not even sure, it's in Panama, so it's their asset. They own it, I guess.
We operated it when the United States built it in partnership, and then operated it. It was called the Canal Zone. It was a U.S. administered governed zone with American schools and population and so forth. When I was there in 1991, we took jet fuel through the canal. Because we were a Navy ship, we had priority to go through the canal. We didn't have to wait a couple of days, so we went right through, got off the ship at an American Navy base in Rodman, had a nice lunch, got away from some of the crappy food on board the ship, and had a nice lunch at the Officers Club at the Navy base, but it very American administered at that time.
What would the president accomplish? I assume it's Panama sovereign. There's all sorts of treaties.
Right.
Tomorrow, if we took over the Panama Canal, you don't widen it.
right?
Do you?
Well, what the concern is, and leave it to others to expertise as to whether or not the concern is valid, right? But you have a Hong Kong company, Hutchinson Ports, CK Hutchinson, Hong Kong company that's operating the marine terminals on both sides of the canal, on both the Pacific and the Atlantic sides of the canal. The concern is, right, that the Chinese government has access to be able to deploy intelligence assets within that company, that they can see everything that's moving through the canal, that there's far more going on than just, or at least the possibility.
Unbelievable. So this circles back to worry about the Chinese.
Absolutely. What we're doing, and guys, I know it's not the topic of the day, right? But Biden's trip to Angola several weeks ago, the Libido corridor, which is where I believe the uranium for the Manhattan Project loaded out coming from Congo, how necessary it is on infrastructure.
The president also wants to take over Greenland as the 53rd state. Have you been to Greenland, Anton Posner?
I've flown over Greenland on back and forth to Europe, as probably all of us have, right?
But you've not been to Greenland.
I have not been to Greenland. Yeah, I'm not going to be useful for the Greenland episode, but never know. Great. Boots on the ground, right?
What a clinic, Anton Posner. Thank you so much. With Mercury Resources, next time we'll talk about the maritime state of America, but today we focus in on Panama. Boy, I learned a lot there. It's very cool.
Again, this MapGo function is amazing, and ships from both sides of Panama literally converging on the canal.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Crazy.
Can cruise ships go through it?
They do every day.
Cruise ships go through every day. We
Every
moved
day.
to the surveillance control room. Cy, you're living on cruise ships 3 times a year. Cy, have you been through the canal?
He's not.
That's got to be the next thing on the bucket list. I mean, it's got to be that way.
I would love to do that. That's a bucket list thing for me.
It's like negative out there. And then here it's frigid, 15 degrees. What do? You play James Buffet.
Oh, perfect.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Stay with us. An eventful 9 o'clock hour coming up. Critical Dana Telsey will join us on Nordstrom's. Good morning.
Smell of shrimp there beginning to boil. Wasting away again in Margaritaville. Searching for my lost sugar or salt. Some people claim that there's a woman to blame, but I know it's nobody's fault.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney.
I'm sorry, it's a boom economy, and that's what we're adjusting to.
Neither party seems to want to take on deficits at all.
With Lisa Mateo on markets.
Stocks are coming off of another record high.
And Michael Barr with news.
Tensions between the U.S. and China have heated up even more.
The best in economics, finance, investment, and international relations. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on Bloomberg Radio.
Good morning, everyone. Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney, Michael Barr with us as well. Lisa Mateo in moments with the Bloomberg Business Update. Good morning on radio and good morning on Bloomberg Television around the world. A simulcast, if you will, to get us through the day. Important guests in this hour. Andrew Slimon of Morgan Stanley will join us. And Dana Telsey, I was going to do like, how's the Louis Vuitton box at Fifth Avenue? Right. Forget about it. An iconic name and family in American retailing, Nordstrom's, will finally move private, and Dana Telsey will give us wisdom on that in the hour as well. Again, we welcome you on YouTube, on your commute at home. Go on the commute, Apple CarPlay, all that, Android Auto, Bloomberg Radio, good morning. And then when you get to the office, Paul, YouTube, except if you're not at the office today, work from home, cook from home, you watch us on YouTube at home.
Watch us on YouTube, and we'll bring you all the market action here. Tom, a little bit of a mixed on the screen here. S&P futures off 12, the Dow off 200, but the Nasdaq's up a little bit.
Dollar strength, you see that? DXY over 108 right now. Yen really doesn't go. 157.21, euro dollar 103.99, American oil $69.23. But the real headline to me, and we'll talk to Andrew Slimon about this in a moment, 2-point market up, this is a new high, 2.25% on the 10-year real yield. Where's the mortgage right now, Paul?
Oh, it's almost almost 7% there, Tom. So the folks that are, boy, I'd like to move, sell my house, maybe go down to Florida with the rest of them. I can't get out of my 3 or 4% mortgage and go and get a new mortgage at 7%. I'm not doing that. So
on television, on radio, we say good morning to all of you here. And of course, what we do is the Bloomberg Business Flash. It's from the Interactive Brokers Studios. We thank them for that. Lisa Mateo, good morning.
Good morning to you. And we've got futures mix. This is after a year-end shutdown was avoided. NASDAQ futures, little change, up about 12 points. We have Dow futures down 0.4%, 210 points. S&P futures down 0.2% or 12 points. The 2-year yield at 4.33%, up 1 basis point, and the yield on the 10-year 4.55%, and that's up 3 basis points. We have Brent crude $72 a barrel, WTI crude $69 a barrel. We have spot gold lower at $2,617 an ounce. Over to the Bloomberg dollar spot index, up 0.3%. We have the Japanese yen weaker, down about 0.5% at 157.22 against the dollar. The euro weaker, British pound weaker. We have Bitcoin down about 0.2% at just over 94,000.
You did that for television,
I totally
did.
Yeah,
we never would have quoted that on radio. Continue, Miss Mateo.
We'll get to those companies making news right now. You've heard it here. Tom mentioned it. Nordstrom going private, all-cash transaction valued at about $6.25 billion. Nordstrom shares down more than 1%. And then Xerox has agreed to buy Lexmark. Lexmark, it's a deal valued at $1.5 billion. Xerox shares up about 8%. And Honda and Nissan have agreed to start merger talks, form a holding company. They plan to list by August 2026. Honda will actually buy back as much as $7 billion of its own shares. You have Honda up about 3% in Japan, Nissan up more than 1%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Lisa Mateo, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, we welcome all of you on Bloomberg Television this morning as well. We're thrilled to get smarter with Andrew Slimon, head of, Applied Equity Advisors. I have no idea what that is at Morgan Stanley. What Andrew Slimon will give you is the courage to participate in the market. Andrew, how do we get to a third double-digit bull market year?
Well, I think you have a combination of lower rates, $7 trillion sitting in the money markets that will search for a new home, or some of it will, and pro-growth policies. And that's how you could get to another double-digit year for the equity market.
I look at it, and it's double-digit earnings here. Gino Martin-Adams of Bloomberg Intelligence talking up 14%. Maybe it comes down. Do the security analysts at Morgan Stanley get you to a double-digit earnings growth year?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, Tom, that, I've been on your show a lot. I've been pretty optimistic the last couple of years is that it's not about valuation. It's about the direction of the change. And what's, I tell, especially younger investors all the time, be very wary of pure valuation tools as a methodology to evaluate the stock market or a stock is cheap or expensive, because sometimes analysts don't get the denominator, the estimate right. And really what's been going on the last couple of years is earnings have been stronger than what is expected. So far, I've seen a lot of predictions that earnings are too strong for next year, but I haven't seen those numbers come down yet. And that falls into the positive camp.
I mean, Paul, that's the Andrew Slimon says, look, you got to participate.
Yeah.
Go to cash.
Yeah,
it's not going to work. Next.
Not going to work. Hey, Andrew, we've got the Fed cutting rates, but now it looks like in 2025 at a slower pace than maybe the market had been anticipating. How does that impact your view of the equity markets?
Yeah, I think this is good news.
Good news.
And let me articulate why. What I have been worried about is if you look at what's worked since July, when the Fed said they're going to start to cut rate, what has worked in the market is the low quality, what I would call junk growth stocks. A lot of companies that don't, have high revenue estimates but no earnings or very little earnings, very high multiples. The more risk you have taken in the last 6 months, the better you have done. And that scares me because that screams of the year 2021, and we know what happened in 2022. The market fell apart. So to the extent that I think the Fed has kind of encouraged that risk-taking by saying, hey, we're going to cut rates, if they say, hey, you know what, we're going to go a little slower, good, rates going up, that takes the heat out of the bubble that I think is occurring in these speculative stocks. Right. I think that's healthy for the stock market. In many ways might extend the bull market longer than just 2025. Right.
Andrew Slimon with us, and we will continue with him. He's with Morgan Stanley, of course. We welcome all of you across the nation. If you're working, if you're computing, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, of course, Sirius XM, Channel 121. Good morning on Bloomberg Television worldwide and on YouTube, all of our distribution on YouTube. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts. It's the only way to observe Lisa Mateo. It's a constructive exercise, to say the least. Andrew Slimon, last week we had in the giant of free cash flow. You and I read free cash flow and shareholder yield with William Priest of Epic. It was iconic then. How do you study free cash flow in this great bull market? What's the Slimon method?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I hear a lot of people come on shows like this and talk about how you have to have expansion beyond the Mag 7 and how it's dangerous that these stocks are very high weighting the S&P. And I certainly agree with that. But at the end of the day, these are the companies, if I look at what's worked year to date from a kind of factor standpoint, corporate buybacks, companies that are buying back stock aggressively have in general outperformed. And that's the big boys. So to the extent that your question about cash flow, I look and say, well, what companies are generating a lot of cash flow? It's some of the best are these really big companies. So I think one of the most consensus trades for next year is that the market's going to expand beyond the Mag 7, and I think there's plenty of good ideas beyond Mag 7. But you have to face the reality. These companies are generating a lot of cash flow, and they're buying back stock, and that is positive. That's a big difference, Tom, to 1999, 2000.
Andrew, thank you so much. Andrew Slimon with us, Morgan Stanley, this morning on the courage to stay in the market. This is a special treat right now on this Monday. It's a frigid Monday. It's warm and cozy, the best hockey player at Bloomberg LP among 20-some thousand people, garbed in her New York Rangers wardrobe. Scarlett Fu comes in after a lot of coverage here through the morning. Scarlett, I've been dying to get you in here to talk viscerally about what we're going to see next year from Beijing over to Taiwan and all the heritage of the Fu family as well. Are you? I know you're studying this. You're studying it all the time. But as we have a new president, what seems to be what Taiwan wants from America as you study it every day?
stability, some offer of stability, and some
like
sense
boats
that
showing the flag. It's that simple, isn't it?
I don't know if it's that specifically, but for things not to get worse, status quo may be just what you need. They don't need Trump, saber rattling any more than he already has, and they don't need Xi Jinping doing any more than what he already has.
What was the response? We had a lot of legislators, including at the time Speaker Pelosi, wander over to Taiwan as well. Bring that forward into 2025. To our politicians, is it advantageous if they show the flag in Taiwan?
You know, it depends on who you ask. If you ask the younger generation, they probably would say yes. They like seeing that because they see Taiwan as their own independent country, its own culture, its own separate entity. You ask an older generation, you might get a very, very different answer. So, I mean, and of course, it's the older generation that has ties to the Kuomintang, right, to the nationalist government that ran and fled to Taiwan from the mainland.
How do you think the folks in China are thinking about this incoming administration? What's the view, do you think, over there? Is it concern? Is it optimism? Is it fear? What do you think it is?
I think they feel like they know that they're dealing with a known quantity here.
Okay.
The fact that President-elect Trump invited Xi Jinping to his inauguration, and Xi Jinping and his team saw it for what it was, a flex, and we know that he's not going to be attending. I mean, this is all kind of part and parcel. I don't want to say that he's using an authoritarian playbook, but it's a little bit of like recognizes like.
Okay, we got to go here. We got to get her in here. The Rangers were Stanley Cup bound.
Hey, did I tell you, Tom, that I scored 2 goals for my team this season?
Did you lift the puck?
No, it dribbled in past the goalie. But you know what? A goal's a goal.
You scored 2 goals?
I scored 2 goals, yeah.
From outside the circles for the slot?
No. Like right from the goalie. I was kind of screening the goalie, but kind of not.
Okay, I got a problem. There's this guy that's suspended. For those of you worldwide on Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio, Fu is going down in flames with the New York Rangers.
What happened?
Why are they skating this guy who every time he shows up, he gets suspended for cheap shots? In the old days, he would have got 3 teeth out.
You're talking about Matt Rempe?
Yeah. What is this guy? What's the
Animal
value
spirits.
at?
He gets, the crowd into it. He gets his team excited. I think that's the plan, or that's the vision behind it. I mean, the team needs some kind of pick me up because the core team, the core guys aren't doing it at the moment.
But they were doing it last year, and then what happened?
I don't know.
I don't know what happened.
President's Trophy curse, maybe?
Yes, okay.
And what you don't see up here on YouTube and on radio, I'm pointing at my headphones here, is Fu's entourage. She goes around with like 3 or 4 people.
Yep.
Ask her about Cornell BU. Are they doing the hockey game again, MSG?
They're
Cornell
doing it
BU?
next year, yeah. Cornell beat the team that we played. Who did we play? Quinnipiac. This November.
Oh, listen to you snob. Quinnipiac of Connecticut.
I know, no. I know. They were a very good team, but Cornell beat them. And we most of the games I've seen at Thanksgiving weekend at MSG, Cornell has won handedly. So we're going to see Cornell BU in 2025.
Are we as well? Okay. Usually she comes in at 11 a.m.
I know.
I mean, this is like...
Yeah, I waltz in. This is true.
Waltzes in. Exactly. Scarlett Fu. Joan Rivers does a skit, folks, about the tallest Christmas tree. One Christmas she decided that she was doing Christmas up. Mary wore Chanel and Hermes and Manolo Blahnik. And her tree, Joan Rivers' tree, the late, great Joan Rivers, it was matched off Scarlett Fu's tree in her house.
Wow. Okay.
It's like 32
That's big.
feet.
I didn't know that.
It's like huge. It's in the back room up north of the city.
I have a couple of trees,
Why did I not know that?
Multiple trees.
Scarlett Fu, thank you so much for joining us this morning on television, on radio worldwide, Bloomberg's surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. We've got a mix of red and green on the screen, and this is after the fight over spending in Washington. Well, it was put on hold for another 3 months. We have NASDAQ futures little changed up about 10 points. Dow futures down 0.4%, 177 points. S&P futures down 0.1% or 10 points. The 2-year yield at 4.32%. That's up 1 basis point. And the yield on the 10-year, 4.54%. That's up 2 basis points. Over to commodities, we have Brent crude at $72 a barrel. WTI WTI crude $69 a barrel, and spot gold lower at $2,618 an ounce. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up about 0.3%, and we have Bitcoin up 0.3% at just over 95,000. Few companies making news. We'll start with Palantir and Anduril. They're reportedly in talks to partner with some tech rivals to make a joint bid for U.S. government work. That's according to the Financial Times. You have Palantir up about 0.2%. Universal Music Group, you know, the company behind Taylor Swift, Drake. Well, they have expanded its global partnership with Amazon Music. And then you have Hyatt Hotels in exclusive talks with Playa Hotels and Resorts over options that may include a sale. Playa up about 20% and Hyatt up 3%. And finally, the Container Store filed for bankruptcy, addressed growing losses and a substantial debt load. I know, very sad. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Lisa Mateo. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash.
But that speaks to retail. I mean, you've got Dana Telsey of Nordstrom, and Nordstrom's coming up here, and the retail is brutal.
It is.
It's just, I mean, there's no other way to put it.
It is.
Good morning on radio and television. This is Paul Sweeney, Tom Keene, Lisa Mateo, Mr. Barr showing up from time to time. We welcome all of you to our frigid studios here, our world headquarters in New York, Lexington at 59th Street. I've been dying for this conversation. This is on foreign exchange, which I call the litmus paper of the system, the deepest market out there. And I got a chart. I'm not going to explain it because it's too cold outside. But the answer is the Plaza Accord was in the 80s. Massively strong dollar. OMG, are we going to have a Mar-a-Lago Accord? And if you do the geometry of the move that caused the Plaza Accord, we're nowhere near the dollar strength yet to get to the Mar-a-Lago Accord or the, whatever accord they're going to call it. Jane Foley of Rabobank joins us here with DXY 108, yen 157.16. Jane, do you extrapolate out that someday there will be too much dollar strength for the global system?
Well, I don't think we're anywhere near that day yet. I mean, you can never say never, and maybe we will get to that. But you've got to remember that if there is going to be an accord, well, lots of different sides have got to agree to that. And right now, who's going to agree to that? I mean, if you put yourself in the position of some of those German exporters, they're probably quite happy with a softer euro right now, particularly given the threat of tariffs potentially from the Trump administration. Would they suddenly agree to have a stronger euro and a weaker dollar and maybe tariffs? I don't think they would. So we're nowhere near coming to that agreement. I mean, would we get to a situation when it could be said, well, look, you agree to maybe a softer dollar and there will be no tariffs? Maybe we could get to that sort of negotiation. I mean, it's not unconceivable, but I don't think that's what we're looking at, certainly not for this year.
What should we observe on global Wall Street, on currency dynamics? What's the Jane Foley metric you use to look at this dollar strength tension?
I think we've got to potentially look at emerging markets because there's a lot of fear that because of the Trump policies, because of the threats of tariffs, because of the, Made in America theme about, Trump's policy, the want to get manufacturing back into the US, what is that going to do to investment in emerging markets? So in fact, what's it going to do to investment in other parts of the world as well? And that, I think, will be, something that the global economy is going to be very sensitive to. I mean, I've read some reports that suggest that some emerging markets will be almost uninvestable because of the Trump policies, because of the pull to get investment back into the US. And I think that's something that we're going to watch. That's something that could really affect the global dynamic.
And Jen, even for the developed market currencies, with the Fed cutting at a slower rate than maybe we had anticipated just several months ago, yet we still have the ECB and the banks across the world cutting rates. I can't think of a bear case for this U.S. dollar. Is there one?
Well, I would agree. It's difficult to figure that out. I mean, maybe, against the yen, maybe the yen can pull up ground because, we have this story of the Bank of Japan, potentially hiking the rates, progressively, although cautiously through 2025. But there is that bigger story. Japan is wants to sort of pull itself out, is pulling itself out of 30 years, really, of disinflation, deflation, and it wants to win investment. Now, if it does win more investment investment into Japan, or indeed if some of those big Japanese life insurers, buy less U.S. Treasuries and more JGBs, well, you could have a different story for the yen. But apart from that, I would agree with you. I think certainly going into the middle of next year, and it's quite murky to try and, really figure out what's going to go on in the global economy beyond that. I think we are looking at a stronger dollar story.
So where is there value out there in some of these other currencies here that are just screaming value out there at this moment?
I think, what perhaps a lot of people are going to do is try perhaps to leave the dollar out of the equation and maybe look at currency pairs such as euro yen, euro sterling, Aussie New Zealand, those sorts of currency pairs, because, that there is this perception that there's a lot of this news already priced into the dollar. The market was still surprised last week with the hawkish hold from the Fed. Not an awful lot is priced in now with respect to Fed interest rate cuts. There's a lot of cuts priced into the euro, for instance. So there is, on one hand, this perception that maybe we've seen most of this move, and hence the attraction of looking at some of these cross rates. But personally, I think the dollar probably has still more strength to show us.
Okay, I got to make some money here, Jane. Christmas is killing me this year. Jane Foley, am I going to go long Korea won of the absolute train wreck of news flow on KRW? Do I want to go strong Korean won from this peaky moment? And if I do, what pair am I going against?
I think if you are going to go strong Korean won, and there are lots of, strong fundamentals about, that economy, politics aside, I think you'd probably pick out another emerging market. Now, obviously, you sort of run into some liquidity issues there. But, I think that's what to do. I mean, I would certainly think you'd be very brave trying to buy that against the dollar, or trying to buy it against the yen at that point.
I'm ready to trade here. Give me one what is my trade here to play Korea short? Is it Korean won, Japanese yen? Is it Korean won, Polish zloty? I love saying that, zloty. Which is it, Jane?
I think you could do it against the euro. I don't think the euro is going to have a very good time in the first part of next year. But you know what? I think that's going to be good news for the Europeans because of, the stagnationary position of Germany's economy, the political issues, the structural issues that we've got in Germany right now. I think a weak euro is exactly what that economy needs. And I think increasingly the governing council at the ECB are coming to recognise that.
This is great. I mean, I love it. I've never typed in EURKRW, Euro Won.
You can do that at Rabobank.
You can do that at Bloomberg. You do it every day at Rabobank. Jane Foley, thank you so much. We're looking at EUR. Lisa's like, she's on the phone right now trading this puppy. Euro Korean Won. We do not make recommendations here, we should say. Jane Foley again of Rabobank. Across the nation, of course, and really worldwide, I should say, Apple CarPlay, hugely international. Good morning, Sirius XM. And on the radio corridor from 99.1 Washington up to 92.9 in Boston. Yep. And this morning we're on Bloomberg Television with you, and we welcome all of you out on Bloomberg Television. Does my makeup look okay?
Perfect.
I did. I said to Lisa, what she whispered in my ear, Guerlain. Get some Guerlain, you'll be better. So I hope the makeup's okay for Bloomberg Television. I mean, that's the way they roll over there. We don't,
Alex Steele says you have to invest in your face. That's all I know.
Oh, really?
Yeah. John Tucker and we missed that memo.
I completely missed that memo. Don't forget, we're out on YouTube. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcast. Originally, we're out on Bloomberg Originals as well.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
Good morning from New York City, frigid New York City. Coming up, Dana Telsey will join us middle next half hour. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. I'm Lisa Mateo alongside Tom Keene, Paul Sweeney with your opening bell report. So how are these markets going to kick off this shortened trading week after a year-end shutdown was avoided? We also had more economic data. Durable goods orders fell 1.1% month over month. The expectation was for a drop of 0.3%. And then November building permits, they were revised down. Right now, we'll start with the S&P 500. Little change, down up about 4 points at 5,935. We have the Dow down 0.2%, 80 points at 42,755. And finally, the NASDAQ up 0.3%, 76 points at 19,652. The 2-year yield at 4.32%. That's little change. And the yield on the 10-year 4.53%. That's up 1 basis point. Right now, we'll head over to Brent crude, $72 a barrel. WTI crude, $69 a barrel. We have spot gold lower at $2,618 an ounce. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up about 0.3%. The Japanese yen down 0.4% at 157.09 against the dollar. The euro down about 0.2% at 104.02 against the dollar. And the British pound weaker. Finally, Bitcoin up 0.3% at just over 95,000. That is your Bloomberg opening bell report. Paul and Tom.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Greatly appreciate that. A little bit of oomph to the market versus with futures. Where Paul, Apple opening up fractionally, 255. It's just been on a modest tear. I got a $3.857 trillion. I interpolated the extrapolation. I've held my hand.
Yep.
And it's like 263 is a $4 trillion Apple. What's its signal besides it's unimaginable?
People buying a lot of these things. So that's the first thing. There's a bunch of these Apple products.
Apple, China, OMG, they're all going to die.
Boy, I still think that China is an issue for this company, but boy, the investors don't care. The market does not care. Again, 52-week high today, up 32% year to date. Not too shabby.
Very good. I did not know that.
BQ function.
We say good morning to all of you on radio and television worldwide. Scarlett Fu, huge impact having Scarlett Fu in there.
2 goals for her team.
2 goals for her team, and she did not lift the puck and dribble, but sort of like the Rangers. We say good morning on economics, finance, investment, international relations, synthesizing it in, and someone helping us with that is Steve Snik. Steve Snik is chief strategist at Interactive Brokers. What are we missing in this market? If I sit there in the morning on Saturday with my Senka, and I'm reading Barron's, and I'm turning the pages just like Mom and Grandpa did years ago, what am I missing in the Saturday morning Barron's?
I think I'm not going to say that I know you're missing it, but I think the key element here is we've all become momentum traders, and we've all gotten a bit speculative, and that's really what's going on, and the speculation has gotten increasingly crowded and narrow. I think it was very meaningful that Friday was the first time in the month of December that we did not have S&P decliners outpacing S&P advancers. And prior to that, prior to Wednesday's drop, the S&P was up for the month. So I think it's becoming increasing. Once again, we're seeing this concentration in the Mag 7. You were just discussing Apple. My fear is it's becoming a little bit cultish and a little bit narrow because, if you think about a building, if you keep knocking out pieces of the foundation, eventually it becomes less stable.
So as we...
Yeah, that describes Paul Sweeney's place on Nantucket.
Exactly.
Roll into the ocean.
2025, what's the theme going into 2020? We've had 2 years of 20% plus growth in the S&P 500. What happens in a third year?
Well, this is the thing. What kind of, the be fearful when others are greedy type of element is really creeping into my mindset quite a bit. Everybody's talking about, how this market is likely to continue to rally. People are talking about the 15% or so S&P profit growth expected for 2025. Well, that's priced in already. So I do think right now we witnessed a bit of extra government dysfunction on Friday, basically with the budget crisis. I think there's going to be a lot more political uncertainty that the market hasn't priced in, and I think there's a lot of good news already priced in, and nobody's expecting anything on the downside, which makes me wonder: are we susceptible?
What are you hearing, observing in your meetings? You're away from this in strategy, but as we would say to your competitors like Robinhood or your competitors like J.P. Morgan, what are you hearing from Interactive Broker clients? What's the mood? I can't figure it out.
The clients are definitely favoring. They're favoring the same names that you know. If I asked you to guess what our top 5 names are, you'd probably get them. It's Nvidia. It's Tesla now. It's unseated Nvidia.
I mean, retail basically is saying, forget about the sophistication of Wall Street. We're comfortable owning these things.
Yes, and for example, when you had Broadcom zooming higher and Nvidia sinking a little bit, we actually saw our customers fading Broadcom a little bit and buying Nvidia in size. So they are sophisticated in that sense. They were taking the opposite of the institutional flow. But what we tend to see is a lot of speculation. And they love double levered ETFs. So if you like Tesla, why not have TSLL?
On this show, we say triple leveraged. Okay, that's where we're going. It's in registration. Belchunas went back and forth with me. Lisa, I mean, the quality of this bull market, you're transfixed by it, right?
Of course.
So, Steve, I mean, Interactive Brokers, what are your clients buying these? Are they just still buying the Mag 7? Are they trying to find some value out there? Are they trying to get thematic with a Trump presidency?
I think themes are very important. So Tesla is again resumed number 1. We see Palantir. Now some of that may have had to do with the NDX rebalancing, but Palantir's gotten very popular. Anything to do with quantum computing came out of the blue. So a lot of these names
Lisa's been reporting on all day.
Exactly. When I look at our most active list, some of these names I had to sort of look up the symbols. I'm like, I've never heard of these companies because they're relatively small quantum computing companies that went from, let's say 2 to 12 in the course of a few days, and our customers are very perceptive about those kind of moves and tend to jump on them and view them as trading opportunities.
BitDog. I mean, Steve, you've been doing this for years. I mean, you were at Solomon, what, 1830, 1870?
Back when
did you walk in the door at Solomon Brothers?
I first walked in the door as a summer intern in 1985.
So like Bunker Ramo.
I remember when when we first got a Bloomberg terminal. That was exciting. I was the kid who was told to figure out how to use it, basically.
Really? You looked at, and right behind me, folks, for those of you on radio and television and YouTube, right behind me is our museum of terminals, and Sosnick and I can go out and walk to the right, and there's back there. Yep. Remember when there was a green button on the terminal and it said message?
Yes.
And you didn't know, you'd literally you'd go in every day, what is this button for? I mean, and of course, Mr. Bloomberg, of course, I think darkened the door at Salomon.
He did.
Years ago. I mean, it was fun back then. Pim Fox had the bond, the S&P Blue Book, the bond book, and we bought individual stocks. Are we doing that, or are we all like Lisa, just buying an ETF?
I think most of us are buying ETFs and index funds, but what we see among our clients who tend to be active traders, and I'll use the term here that one of my friend Henry Schwartz at the SIBO called pro-tail, and I love it. And he didn't refer to pro-tail, which I think refers.
Can we say that on radio?
I don't know. And that's why I had to footnote him but I think it's great because our customers, it's very hard in many cases to delineate who's retail and who's professional because many of them are sort of this is a lot of it. So those customers are very active traders and surprisingly sophisticated.
I like that.
We're stealing this puppy.
Yeah. Yes. Well, that's why I had to give credit when credit was due to start.
So Interactive Brokers, ETFs, that must be what your clients are trading all the time because of the lower cost aspect of it, right?
Yes and no. I mean, again, number one on our list, yes, there's always big ETFs on the list. And again, in many cases, the mentality is why trade triple Qs when you could trade TQQQ, which is 3x leverage, to Tom's point. We do see a lot of action, individual stock and options. But for example, IBIT, our customers weren't all that interested in it. And then they listed options. And then all of a sudden, IBIT started to creep into the most actives list. So again, they want option. Our customers trade a lot of options. My career is really as an options trader, and this is how we were built, and this is what our customers gravitate to.
IBIT, iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF is an exchange-traded fund domiciled in the U.S. That's what they're trading.
Well,
and the triple leverage.
Well, they trade a lot of among them. They also trade a lot of MicroStrategy, which is effectively a double or triple levered Bitcoin, Bitcoin ETF.
2, 3, 4. Off the Bloomberg Professional Service, the triple cubes, I've never looked this up before, TQQQ, was down 15% in 3 days with that leverage here.
Yep.
On, you know, pull back to, can you imagine where they would go on a VIX of 30? I mean, that would be something.
Well, we almost got right. I mean, VIX got to 28, so that was pretty much close to it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that was very much on Wednesday I need protection and I need it now, or I needed it 10 minutes ago, and I'm going to pay up for it.
What are your clients doing on the fixed income space here? Because now they can actually get yield here for the first time in many, many years.
Well, we're very proud of the fact that we have and I don't mean to sound like a commercial, but this is true. We have we offer access electronically to, and I forget how many thousands of bonds, corporate, municipal, government, et cetera. Our customers, again, the investor customers are good with bonds. They are finding that there's yield. The trading customers find them less exciting than stocks and options.
Yep.
All right. What's your structure for next year? The greatest thing about Steve Snik is there isn't an 822-page outlook. It's like on a 3x5 card. What's a 3x5 card look like for next year for people at home? They're in a 401k. They've actually been doing okay. Now what?
Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Be wary, because one of the things that I think January is going to be very telling. As I know I'm saying this as in December, we have a couple weeks to get through anyway, but January 20th is the inauguration on a market holiday, by the way. That's Martin Luther King Day. Don't forget that one.
Oh.
So that's an interesting feature.
Okay. Didn't know that.
But then earnings season to me is going to be crucial, because again, if we're expecting double-digit earnings growth in 2025 off of, call it 2 to 3% inflation and 3% GDP, where does the other 9 or 10% come from? Mm-hmm. And so if companies don't reaffirm that, and you've seen it day to day when companies don't do it, think about Micron. Out it goes.
You're the first person on the show to mention this, Paul J. You can look through this, folks, on the DES screen. Lisa Mateo taught me this, that the Apple Equity DES, January 30th of next year, is Apple earnings. And nobody's talking about this yet, but with JP Morgan starting out, it's going to be a big deal, isn't it?
I think so. I think this is going to be critical to set the tone for the year. If the companies indicate that the guidance is good enough to support what's already priced in, well, then the market can do fine. If any whiff of trouble is out there, the market's going to have to readjust and readjust quickly.
Steve Snik, thank you so much, with Interactive Brokers, our chief strategist, with us this morning. We say good morning across the nation and a frigid commute. Some in Keene, Texas, 70 degrees this week. Not everywhere is cold.
Keene, Texas. I was thinking, what's in Keene, Texas? We got some tank people down there. The U.S. Army's got a big base down there.
Yeah, it's like between Waco and
that's what I was thinking.
And Austin, and it's on I-35.
Yeah, serious
you play ZZ Top when you roll down there. You're okay. We say good morning across the nation. You're on your commute, Apple CarPlay, Sirius XM. Good morning. On the corridor on Bloomberg Radio 99.1 FM in Washington. Nathan Ager killing it this morning with the early daybreak, and on up, of course, to 92.9 FM in Boston, and of course on YouTube. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcasts out on YouTube, growing each and every day. There you can find the best of Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television. We say good morning to Bloomberg Television across, worldwide this morning, I should say as well. What's coming up? Dana Telsey with us here. For those of you worldwide, Nordstrom's is this iconic Northwest American name. It is a heritage. It's like Macy's. They don't have a Thanksgiving Day parade.
No,
and they probably
Seattle.
used to, because it used to be across the nation. But Nordstrom's is iconic. They throw in the towel this morning, and they will go private. And it's been, I think we've been waiting for this.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
But we have the guest. I can't tell you how Dana Telsey is perfect to give us perspective on the struggles of retail in America. Red and green on the screen. NASDAQ up a sprightly 0.4%. Dow goes the other way. Fractionally, the VIX, 18.75 on the VIX. What am I looking at? The 10-year real yield out to a lofty 2.24%. Some of the tension that we see within the fixed income system. On Bloomberg Radio, on Bloomberg Television, good morning.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Lisa Mateo. Well, stocks are split, and this is after a government shutdown was averted. We have the Nasdaq up about 0.1%, 32 points, but the Dow down 0.4%, 178 points. The S&P 500 down 0.1% or 4 points. We head to the 2-year yield, 4.33%, up 2 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.55%, and that's up 2 basis points. Brent crude $72 a barrel. We have WTI crude $69 a barrel, and spot gold lower at $2,614 an ounce. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index up about 0.3%. It is a big day for two stocks with cult followings. We're talking about MicroStrategy, Palantir, both entering the NASDAQ 100 index. Steve Snik, Interactive Brokers, was just talking about Palantir. MicroStrategy said it brought about $561 million of Bitcoin last week, funded by issuing new stock. But both of them are down right now. Palantir down about 1%, and MicroStrategy down about 5%. Something else Steve was talking about, stocks linked to quantum computing, D-Wave Quantum. Those shares up about 17%. You have Rigetti Computing up about 22%, and quantum computing up 3%. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Tom.
Lisa, thanks so much. On Bloomberg Radio, on Bloomberg Television, the VIX 19.00. Right now, and this is an immense honor, Dana Telsey scheduled to join us on the holiday, but we must pause for the end of an era. Nordstrom's Always and Forever of Seattle will go private. This on the same day as a Container Store files for bankruptcy. Lisa Mateo had that story earlier. And the emotion of a family running a store defines Dana Telsey as no one else on the island of Manhattan. She was intimately involved with a small store at 57th Street and 5th Avenue, name of Bergdorf Goodman, as a child. Dana, the emotion of a family running retail, and then it's over. Describe your thoughts as you hear of the privatization of Nordstrom.
A couple things. So first of all, Tom, thank you very much for having me, and it's an honor to be here with you, and happy holidays to you and your family. And you're right, exactly. The privatization of a family-run business that's been around for over 100 years is definitely a spark of change. I think the new environment today is different than it was in the past, and you have to give Nordstrom credit for all that it's accomplished. But the go-forward environment requires big changes, and whether it is a reduction in the number of full-line stores they have, the acceleration of what may be for the rack, the continuous pursuit of new and curated brands in their assortment, and
right.
for all what we know about Nordstrom, the service element and the loyal customers they have is something that needs to be expanded and accelerated go forward after all that they've accomplished.
For Nordstrom, and for your Bergdorf Goodman, and as Joe Feldman at Telsey Advisory Group covers big box, what are customers choosing to do this holiday season?
Well, this holiday season, I think overall it continues to be about innovation and newness. You look at Birkenstock, who had very good sales increases in their own stores and wholesale stores. That's newness and differentiation with their closed-toed shoes. I'm thinking of other winners, and you take a look, frankly, at Lululemon, where the newness in colors is driving demand. We're still not seeing the luxury world see any real acceleration. There are certain brands that certainly the super upper end, like Hermes, that's always different than everyone else. But what people are searching for and where they're going continues to be value, particularly at the lower and middle income tier. Whether it be at TJ Maxx, whether it be at Walmart, that's where we're seeing certainly some of the strength lately.
So, Dana, what are some of the retailers that you follow and have followed for such a long time? What are they telling you about this holiday shopping season this year?
Compressed holiday season is a factor. You're seeing 5 fewer days between Thanksgiving and Christmas. Consumers started earlier. There were promotions that began earlier, but the state of promotions isn't greater than what was expected. The other thing that happened with Christmas on a Wednesday, the digital shopping days where you can get even same-day delivery that many companies are putting in place with DoorDash, and you only have one more day to be able to take advantage of that.
Anything kind of jumping out as the go-to gift this year? I know some years we've definitely had those types of stories. Is this one of those years?
I think it's a little bit wider spread. I think, keep in mind, we've had Taylor Swift's concert ending, but Target had the Book of the Eras tour. You have the closed-toed Birkin shoes that basically happen to be very popular. And if you're into denim jeans, barrel leg jeans are what it's all about. And you're still seeing newness in cosmetics occur. And I think that's some of the independent brands that are driving demand.
Yeah, I noticed that the FAM was at Ulta and Sephora. It was a double-digit day. Dana, I got a $9,950 jacket over at Chanel. And the news here, and I think of, The Devil Wears Prada, where Meryl Streep walks in and throws the purses and the bags and all the fanciness. Mathieu Blazy, I know I'm butchering the name, but the guy from Bottega Veneta goes over to quote-unquote save Chanel. What does that signal to you that something as iconic as Coco Chanel's franchise needs saving?
Well, keep in mind, ever since Karl Lagerfeld passed away, who was the icon of the Chanel brand, and you had his long-standing colleague basically take over for the past few years, you need to have a marker. And I think what we've seen this year is many brands are getting new designers. Obviously, you've had things happen at Gucci, which it's needed to happen. We have changes going on at other of LV's brands with the whole change in leadership that's occurring. And I've always believed that typically for many, it's 15 years that a designer has the eye of the consumer and that their eye doesn't get tired of the brand. Karl Lagerfeld did it much longer, and I don't see anyone else like him out there.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is.
Dana, the holiday season here, and I got all these gloom articles out about retail, and yet we're still aspirational. After the pandemic, have we changed as consumption beasts?
No, I think we're always going to be consumption beasts. And you know why? There's a point of excitement and socialization that consumption brings. And look what we're seeing in terms of discretionary spend, where could 2025 see a resumption of acceleration of discretionary spend? Think of what we've seen in 2024, where old brands becoming new again, where the cultural relevance of Gap taking hold. And is Victoria's Secret going to be a name for 2025, given the lines we've seen so far in 2024, with the arrival of Hillary Super as CEO in September of 24.
Dana, great article out on the Bloomberg terminal entitled Kirkland for Christmas. Shoppers ditch logos for store brands. I didn't know that was a thing. What are you seeing out there?
I think overall, when you think about private label and store brands, there's no one more successful in the essentials world than Costco's Kirkland's. And one of the interesting things about their own brand there, everyone knows the name. So yes, store brands matter. You're even seeing some of the department stores and apparel looking to activate and enhance their own private label brands. It's also value, and that it typically has a lower price than any regular brands.
You got Joe has an outperform on Costco. Costco to the moon, Dana.
You know what? A competitive moat that can scale.
Okay.
Think of what Costco has: more stores, more products, more customers, and really loyal members.
Dana, we finished strong here today. Thank you so much in this 9 o'clock hour for your perspective, particularly on JW Nordstrom. They will go private after a decade of price decline, to say the least. We're on Bloomberg Radio, on Bloomberg Television, and we'll continue this dance through the day. Very excited about that. I got red on the screen, a little bit of NASDAQ lift here off of that quantum, whatever it was. The VIX out to 19.10. I mean, do you got a trading feel to it, Paul, or is it like, we're halfway to the holidays to Christmas?
Yeah, I think that's exactly where you're at, Tom. I mean, got the S&P off just a little bit, the Dow off about 200 points, but the NASDAQ's higher. So it looks like it's just kind of some individual names, not much themes there. But, your Bitcoin's off 1.5%. I have to call it out for you, Tom. We're just below 94,000 per token.
2.25% on the 10-year real yield. That's the inflation-adjusted yield. And that's migrated here. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I just can't do it this morning. But 2.25% in the 10-year real yields. They're also watching the dollar with a 108 DXY. I've got the yen 157.17, the euro under 104, the euro 103.96 this morning. We say thank you for your attention through the day. Lots going on this Monday on Bloomberg Radio and Bloomberg Television. We're produced by Cy Benson, and our global technical director, day in and day out, is Kenneth Fellew. Please stay with us on YouTube. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on radio, on television.